I'm an evil doll, but I'm not the problem. No idea how to break this gently, so I guess I'll just lay it all out there and let you make your own judgments. I'm no monster-slaying wunderkind. I'm not a security guard or a gas station clerk. I'm not the most relatable person on the planet, I guess, is what I'm saying. In fact, a lot of folks wouldn't really classify me as a person to begin with. I would, but I'm a little biased. Guess I should just pull out the splinter, shouldn't I? I have black hair, light brown skin, hazel eyes, weigh about 80 to 90 pounds, stand about 3'6", and while we are probably shaped the same, about half of me is cloth, plastic, and ceramic. I'm a golem if you want to be nice, or an evil doll if you want to be an asshole about it. There, I said it. Don't get the wrong impression, I'm totally made to kill. But the person who did it, they had a whole lot more rage than talent. They took a hell of a lot of shortcuts, and let's say that I'm less than the perfect killing machine. Optimally, I'd be a new entity, created from scratch with a superhuman intellect, a body that is damn near impossible to destroy, and a faultless devotion to the person who created me. As it stands, my entire personality, not memories, is from some poor asshole that got kidnapped and tortured by my psychotic creator. My body is 1/5 the corpse from the same guy with the durability to match, and honestly, while I have to follow the instructions given, it's to the letter, not the spirit. But while those instructions are beyond fucked up, my unlucky self is in the middle of something worse somehow. I think. See, my mission is to wait in the attic of this house. For the next 10 years until a certain family moves in. The creator had a bit more talent with foresight than construction. At that point, I'm to terrorize the child for a couple months, then off him. No occult reason, creator is just an asshole, 3-year-old annoyed her, and that was that. But that is small potatoes compared to what is going on in this place right now. I'm 1 year into my decade-long stint. From what I was told, the house should have stayed empty till then. But a few weeks ago, while I was counting the new spiders in the attic, I heard a lot of banging and scraping coming from downstairs. I couldn't very well go down and see what was happening, so I waited until the wee hours of the night. The majority of the flesh in my body is held in my oversized head. Being that top-heavy, trying to navigate the drop stairs from the attic silently was no easy task. I hate to keep bitching here, but levitation is another thing my creator could have given me if she decided to put in more than the minimum of effort. Sure enough, the house is set up for habitation. Dated pastel furniture, an old tube television, and all kinds of knickknacks instantly tell me I'm walking through the place of an older person. The pile of pornographic VHS tapes tells me it's likely an older man. There are bookshelves, a lot of westerns, but an equal amount of books on the occult, ranging from Kohl's bought garbage to a couple I swear I can feel tugging at whatever eldritch shit holds me together. Or maybe it's nerves. For some reason I get to feel nervous. If I was gonna create a murder doll, I'd like to think I'd make sure it couldn't get spooked out. Just my opinion though. I stand perfectly still and listen to see if whoever has taken up residence here has wakened. I hear nothing, so I make my way to the kitchen. Knives. So many knives. Kitchen knives, hunting knives, combat knives, what look to be ritual knives. Just about anything with an edge and a point is on magnetic strips, butcher's blocks, or just angrily jammed into a counter. As someone who has detachable hands I can replace with knives. When there are enough blades to make me worry, something drastic is going on. I listen for another moment before making my way to the fridge. Slowly I open the door, the harsh light from within lighting up the room. Nothing. Not an apple, a soda, or severed human head. Just a discolored, slightly damp-smelling fridge. Not the strangest thing here, but odd. Then I hear it, an extremely soft footstep. Not at the bedroom door like I'd expect. Hearing and sight-wise, I'm pretty immaculate. Necessary for my line of work. But about halfway down the stairs. I don't have a heart to skip a beat, but my eyes begin to dart around looking for a place to hide. I leave the fridge door open and crab walk up the plaster wall silently, wedging myself in the corner of the ceiling, hoping this person doesn't just turn on the lights. I'm an ambush predator, not a brawler. The guy walks into the room without a sound. I can hear snoring 4 houses away, and this guy is dead silent as he calmly scans the room. He is tall, 6'3" or so, and dressed completely in a Catholic bishop's garb. His face is pale and weathered, and his eyes show about as much emotion as mine do. He scans the room like a shark, coasting from corner to corner, abruptly turning, but thankfully not looking up. I can't see his arms, but there is some strange peristaltic motion under his robes. And the longer I am around him, the more I feel dirty. Not that I understand how that is possible without skin, mind you. Eventually, he seems satisfied at the lack of intruders and makes his silent way back to his bedroom. When I'm certain this isn't just a ruse, I scuttle down the wall and back to the attic. I climb to the ceiling and lower the door just enough to squeeze through. I don't sleep, so I spend the next dozen hours running that situation through my head. See, I don't know much about the paranormal beyond my own creation. Hell, I don't know much about many things I don't need to. But I know that something isn't right here, and in a huge way. When I hear the front door shut and a car pulling out of the driveway, I sneak back out of the attic. The place is much the same during the day, creepy, not so subtly violent, and generally having a ghost hunters meets hoarders vibe. Don't know about the paranormal, but I know shitty cable shows way to prioritize creator. But what I didn't notice last night was the door to the basement. Newly painted a deep scummy looking black, and having a myriad of locks studding one side. I walk up to it. I can barely hear something on the other side. I don't know what kind of soundproofing this guy has going on, but it must have cost him an arm and a leg. I place my head against the door with a small clink of porcelain. I can barely hear the sound of a person, obviously in distress. I listen as the scream, trying to make out exactly what they are being harmed by. I can't do it, but I have one trick I can play. My head unfolds like a rose, exposing the withered remains of the man's face, skull, and sensory organs that compose me. I'm hit with a stinging rush of input that stuns me for a moment. The head is protective, but also lets me tone down the sensory overload that comes from the overclocking of the eyes and ears. Suddenly the voice is crisp and clear. I've told you everything I know. Just end it. For God's sake, just end it. A male voice says, sobbing. There is a wet slithering noise and a violent ripping. The man must still be alive, though, judging by his screams. Just stop talking. Please, just do that at least. The man continues as a sudden high-pitched shriek makes me stumble backward, exclaiming, shit. Or rather, that's what I wanted to say. My mouth is full of steel-capped pointed fangs, made for combat, not eloquence. The noise I make sounds more like an aggressive far than English. Before I have the time to get fully back to my feet, something throws itself against the door, the lock straining, barely able to hold whatever it is back. I scramble back to the attic, hoping that whatever that was isn't smart enough to pass on any information. I spend the rest of that day deciding my course of action, and eventually I come to a conclusion. Likely, I'm gonna have to do some screwed up stuff. I don't know if I have a soul, but if I do, my mission in life is going to guarantee it to a pretty shitty eternity regardless of who's right religion-wise. But maybe I can, I don't know, build up some good karma? Something? I know I'm what goes bump in the night, but this guy, I'm starting to think he is the fucking boogeyman. So I decide, in a very vague way, to try and do something about this. I've had a full year to get to know every nook and cranny of this house. Every angle of attack, every hiding spot, vent, and hollow wall. I might not be able to tear this guy and his partner, pet, apart, but I can do what I was made to do. Watch, learn, wait, and when the time is right, make these bastards leak. The thought of direct violence sends a surge of excitement and pleasure through me, reminding me I'm not the good thing, just a force of nature pointed in a good direction. My shoulders and hips dislocate as I slide into the vent, hands and feet rotating to let my spider-like fingers and toes propel me through the air vents. I'm silent and I'm quick. I feel more at home in the confines of the vent, more in control. I find myself hoping the bishop hears me. Maeve sticks his head up to investigate, the thought of his face shredding under my teeth. My hands plunging into his neck pushes me forward even quicker. I slow as I get to the basement vents, knowing whatever is down there can hear as good as myself. I can hear it moving though, wet and grating. The images that go through my mind of what this thing could look like take some of the wind from my sails. I can hear its victim too. No words, just sobbing and gasps from what sounds like a broken jaw. I pause for a moment though as I hear a low chanting. I can't understand the language, but I can feel it gathering power, tugging at me, trying to sweep up whatever animates me into itself. I pull myself to the very edge of a grate. I can see the bishop's arms and the victim, but no sign of the other thing. The victim looks to be in his 20s. White guy, but I'm only guessing. His face and hands are torn to shreds of flesh and gristle, and there is a deep spurting wound in his stomach. He is strapped to a chair with what looks like barbed wire. He tries to raise his head, he tries to struggle, but he is too far gone. The fact this image makes me giddy does nothing for my budding heroism. Then it comes into view. The first thing I see is a deformed, almost cherubic head, skin stretched to its breaking point. Its eyes were little more than elongated slots showcasing angry-looking muscle behind its twitching, bloodshot eyes. Its teeth looked like two solid pieces of sharpened bone. Its white tongue sliding, worm-like, over its bleeding, cracked lips. The body was pale, layers of fat and muscle overlapping, making it an imposing wall of flesh as its stubby legs stomped toward the man in the chair. Its arms were long and lean in comparison to the rest of its body, one massive brown claw extending from the middle finger of each. It put its face inches from the man, the creature's head being almost as large as the man's torso. The bishop begins to chant louder as the monster starts to bring up one of those long brown claws to the man's throat. As the chanting reaches its zenith, the monster plunges the claw in and rips downward, spilling the man's entrails and running that long, dripping tongue over the wound. I can feel pressure in the air as the man's organs start to slide back into his body, a shimmering haze appearing around the wound. Once they are back though, the body continues to collapse inward, tearing and splattering till it is a perfect, fist-sized sphere of gore. Then, with a torrential amount of blood, viscera, and purple mist, it explodes. And out of that mist steps a second monster, smaller than the first, but still a horror that makes me look like Super Ted. I decide to not push my luck, scuttling back to the attic before I am seen. And that is where I'm at. It was a few days ago. I had to wait till I could get to the late 90s computer this guy owns too. What is this really? I mean, I'm hoping for advice, I guess, bearing that just to let people know things like him and me exist. Maybe pull a Pinocchio and end up a real boy if I can save a few lives? Who knows? One of you, I hope. How things progressed. So it seems like my advice followed two main lines of thought: Rip and Tear and Home Alone. I've got to say, might seem like the obvious options, but that is only from the outside. The help was appreciated. I'll address some of the things brought up to help you guys be my cut men and women. Yeah, I'm not really a brawler, I'm no teacup, but in a straight-up fight, I don't know how well against demons, I guess we will call them. As far as upgrades, well, I'll get to that in a bit. But other than that, I'm not too sure that works. I don't know if I should be working out or finding an arc welder or what. Guess I'm going to have to do some experiments. Getting outside seems like a good idea. I'm going to be honest though, I have no idea what outside is like. Where I am is one of those things my creator did not feel the need to equip me with. But I guess it's obvious I'm in a residential neighborhood. Maybe garages or something could work. Which brings me to the next point. I do need to figure out more of what is going on. Truth be told, I know a lot more than I can tell you. Creator blocking me, ruining her plan. I tried to put some of this to work. Some success, some failure. Here it goes. My first setback was lack of access to anything scarier than my teeth, and the 4-inch blades I can swap out my hands for. See, the problem isn't that I wasn't well equipped this time. I actually have a regular-sized chest, covered in a tarp in the attic where my creator assures me rests all kinds of implements of death tailor-made for me. It's made of a dark splintered wood, secured with a massive black iron lock with no keyhole. Faded, purposely antiqued would be a better word. Paint trying to look jaunty and creepy all at the same time reads, Tickle Trunk, in large letters on the top. The problem is that lock has no key. It won't open for me, nor anyone else until my mission begins, leaving me in a rather sad situation offense-wise. I mean, I'm hoping for advice, I guess, bearing that just to let people know things like him and me exist. Maybe pull a Pinocchio and end up a real boy if I can save a few lives? Who knows? I rolled over every option I could think of. Reading the books downstairs? No idea if I'd even understand them. Contacting my creator? Not the killing demons type. Physical force? Tried and failed. These are just a few of the ideas I had before I heard the door to the house smash inward a little after midnight. I scuttle into a vent to try and figure out what's going on. I find a good angle from a floor vent and see a new oddity. The door was indeed smashed to splinters inward, steel reinforcements and thick locks twisted and mangled. Standing in the middle of this was a new person who I had no real right to judge based on weirdness, as an evil doll, but I was going to anyway. He was a stoutly built guy, mid to late 30s, close to 6 feet. Square jaw and a dozen or so nasty scars across his face. His hair was cropped short and he had on a thick brown leather bomber jacket with several hooks and holsters holding various pieces of modified weaponry. A clean white t-shirt and a pair of faded jeans reinforced with bits of leather and steel completed his outfit. The strangest thing about this guy, though, was his right leg. It clicked and whirred as he moved, and as I looked close I could see the hard edges of mechanical parts show through tears in the jeans. Casually across his left shoulder, he held a massive pump-action shotgun, the barrel welded and drilled into an aggressive pointed muzzle. In his right, he held a slab of sharpened steel reminiscent of an oversized cricket bat, a yellow and black danger symbol painted on one side. He holds the shotgun one-handed and fires into the ceiling. The shot makes almost no noise, but the effect is immediate and cacophonous. A piece of the ceiling the size of a child's pool explodes upward, raining down plaster and wood. He walks forward with confidence, his right leg gouging and cracking the hardwood floor as he walked. "Hey, Padre, I'm here for midnight mass," the man says, swinging the sword-like object into a wall in a burst of plaster and sparks as a power line is severed. Faster than I can register, the bishop is at the top of the stairs. A smile that has no effect on his dead eyes spreading across his face. I was wondering how long it would take the choir boy to find me. 2 decades. That's a little long to hold a grudge, don't you think? The bishop says, slowly walking to the bottom of the stairs. This is a long time coming, old man. I've killed a lot of shit worse than you on my way here. I've became more than the result of your little party in the 90s. Choir boy? Asshole. The only thing I'm going to sing is raindrops keep falling on my head as I piss on your corpse. And with that, the man aims and fires his gun at the bishop. The old man glides back up the stairs in a black blur. You think you're the first kid with a gun to come after me? You aren't even the funniest. I notice an accent from the bishop, Dutch maybe. From under his robes, several thick white tentacles begin to snake forth. They are studded with what look to be giant jagged fingernails. He anchors them to the wall and raises his body, swaying and moving like a spider in its own web. The man smiles for a second and throws his shotgun. Somehow as it spins toward the bishop, it fires 4 times, blowing the 4 tentacles to pieces. He catches it as he charges, slamming it into the bishop's face. The gun, upgraded as it is, stays intact, shattering one of the bishop's eye sockets, the dead orb flying across the hall. A fifth tentacle, easily twice the size of the previous one, slams into the man. He keeps his balance on the short flight down the stairs and lands, sword held at the ready. First round to me there, your worship. Don't worry though, I got plenty more for the collection plate. The guy says with a swagger that gives me hope. You got me there. Don't worry though, there won't be a round four. The bishop says as he snaps a finger. One of the cherubic things stalks silently from the kitchen. A high-pitched hollow noise I assume is laughter comes from deep within it. Should have known you'd have something to fight your battles. Couldn't you afford legs for this thing? The man who I'm thinking of as the hero says. I notice him flick a switch on the butt of his shotgun before tossing it to the ground. He draws out a bulky submachine gun. A 2-foot chain anchors it to his wrist. The gun is spiked and studded, all its fragile parts scaled up and shielded. He spins it once like a flail and grabs it by the grip, drawing the monster's attention. He looks at the bishop. Thought you'd like this toy. He says, shifting his gaze to the monster. But I got something you are really going to get a kick out of, big fella. He unleashes a kick that sprays shrapnel toward the beast. It shuts its stretched massive eyes against the debris, making itself completely vulnerable to the steel, piston-driven leg immediately behind the stinging cloud. Its jaw shatters, and it stumbles backward, but the hero keeps his momentum, firing a clip from his machine gun into its chest, then swinging the firearm in a devastating arc into the top of the creature's head. Pale gray blood sprays and rotted-looking yellow bone is exposed as the monster slams into the kitchen wall. It screams and catches the sword that blurs at its neck. The hero reloads his gun single-handed using an ingenious little rig and fires another clip, point blank into the creature. It's hurting, but it's not out of the fight. It rips the sword from the hero's hand and unleashes a massive headbutt that sends the man to the ground, his nose a pulped ruin. The monster picks him up single-handed and tosses him back down the hallway, stomping toward him before he has a chance to rise. The man delivers a series of kicks from the ground that stun the beast, bones deep inside its twisted form breaking and splintering. He kips up with a spray of dust and begins wildly beating the creature with his firearm. He dodges its attacks, spinning and slamming the weapon into the thing. But out of nowhere the creature spins on one arm, catching the hero off guard with a massive backhanded strike. I can almost feel his arm shatter and his ribs break as the wet cracking noise echoes through the hallway. He screams and holds his right arm as he tries to rise. The monster stalks toward him, bloodied and looking on the verge of death itself. Wait, the hero says, defeated. The monster lets out a high-pitched chuckle and shakes its shredded head at the hero, expecting some kind of plea for mercy. Instead, the man starts his own laugh. Just needed a second. Thanks for that. The hero says as a gyroscopic whining can be heard from the shotgun laying on the floor. It aims itself at the creature and fires off over 24 rounds that make the effect of the first few seem petty. The monster explodes apart in wet chunks, defenseless against the torrent of lead and phosphorus. By the time the gun starts dry firing, the demon is nothing more than an ankle-deep pile of gore. The hero stands. He still seems hurt. He is breathing heavily, but he is obviously running on endorphins and rage alone. Looks like we get round 3 after all. I'm feeling it, but not enough to keep from breaking you until dawn. He starts to limp toward the bishop, picking up his custom sword along the way. I said no round 4, the bishop says before whistling. As the second monster stalks from the basement, I realized the first must have been the smaller of the two. It casually bats aside the injured warrior's blade, and to the hero's credit, he stayed conscious for 2 roundhouse blows from the beast. Take him downstairs. Keep the eyes. I need a new one, the bishop says, following the monster hero in tow downstairs. I have a moment of indecision. Do I go back to the attic or follow them? I make my choice, scuttling my way to the vents downstairs. The hero is strapped to a thick wooden chair and is in a groggy state of half-consciousness. The massive demon walks over looking to kill the man. Leave him. We need to replace our losses tonight, the bishop says, turning around with a device that looks too much like a grapefruit spoon. He walks toward the bound man and gets a face full of bloody saliva for the effort. Slowly the bishop wipes the fluid from his face, flicking it back toward the hero. The creature masquerading as a man says nothing, simply drops the serrated spoon and continues to walk toward the hero. The valiant man struggles and curses as the bishop slowly moves his face toward the man. His lips stretch out a little too far and seal around the hero's eye socket. With a tearing noise, he sucks the man's eye from his head, seeming to savor it for a moment before spitting it into a pale claw-like hand. Just squaring us up, fella, the bishop says, popping the eye into his empty socket. With a couple of slow blinks, it syncs up with his remaining eye. Now I get to the fun part. The bishop grins evil and motions for the demon to come over. It's holding a device that looks like a speculum that got into death metal. 2 black iron rings attached to a thick screw with an oversized crank handle. The demon opens the rings and roughly clamps them closed just above the hero's knee. The man tries to struggle and receives a punch to the stomach from a fist half the size of his torso. The hero's screams vibrate the meat inside of my ceramic skull. The demon cranks the handle as bone splinters, muscle starts to tear, and with a sickening explosive noise, the mechanical leg tears free of the man's body. Dispose of that, the bishop says, and immediately the demon begins to slam the leg against the cement floor. Chips of concrete and sparks fly, but there isn't so much as a scratch on the leg. The bishop sighs angrily. You are really a pain in the ass, aren't you? Where'd you get a hold of something like that? No matter. I've got just the thing. The bishop leaves. When he returns, he is wheeling in what appears to be a large industrial microwave. Script and symbols are gouged into its fake oak surface, and as he brings it into the room, the air feels cold and sterile. The bishop plugs it into the wall with an electronic hum, and the cold, isolated feeling becomes a smothering blanket of negative emotion. If your dumb ass doesn't kill me this time, you are fucking dead, old man, the hero says petulantly. Such big words. No, little boy, you get to stay around for a little longer. See, you showed me I need to go a little bigger with my help, and you are the only person that can help me. The bishop says this as he picks up the leg, opening the door of the microwave. It's much too large to fit in, but does all the same. He closes the door and an eldritch green light begins to glow through the door. The hero looks shocked, though barely conscious. Well, that takes care of that then. The twisted old bastard giggles as he removes the leg, now a twisted steaming stump, and drops it to the ground where it shatters like glass. I decide not to push my luck and quickly make my way back into the attic. I'm no genius, but if I'm right, that machine kills magic. The tickle trunk is magic, but what's inside, to the best of my knowledge, isn't. And without the stuff inside, my chances of solving the situation the way I was created to, with violence, is just about zero. If that one-man army couldn't do it, I have no chance. And that is where we are. A little further than before, but what should I do now? Do I try and break that guy out? Seems like he'd be a good ally, even down an eye and a leg. Or should I find a way to go through those books? Chances are, though, it's going to be a while before I get the tickle trunk open. I think next thing I do will involve some supply gathering of a more mundane type. I can't tell if you guys are cold as ice or just looking out for me, but wow, leave the guy. Honestly, though, probably the best decision. I was debating on telling you this, but hey, who else can I trust? I wasn't completely honest with you guys in my last post. I did really hope for that guy to take care of this problem, but I had some other feelings about the situation. I don't know why, but watching him get hurt made me giddy, energized, and I have no idea why. Was I a sick bastard before this? Something from my creator? Something else? No idea, but it makes me want to remind folks, essentially I'm a sentient weapon. And I'm somewhat scared I have less control over my actions than I think. Another major development, it's 2024? I know I should have picked up on this earlier, but I typed this stuff randomly late at night using every sense I have to avoid getting caught. I knew I missed some time, but I was thinking we were in the late 90s by the startup BIOS information in the computer. But 2024? I don't have memories about the guy I was made from, but I do have knowledge of basic world facts and a handful of trivia. This all ends in about 93. I have no clue if this means anything, but why such a long gap? Other than that errata, I'll tell you how my little trip outside the home went. If you are pressed for time, the Cliff Notes version is, it was odd. For everyone wondering about the hero, he's still alive. Barely. I spent a couple days trying to write a note or something to slip to him. But God, these hands I have are not made for detail work. Illegible doesn't begin to describe the scrawl I made. So I decided it was time for a little trip outside the house. Some of you had a few good ideas for intermediate equipment till I get the trunk open, and the first step in that is doing a little recon of the area. Luckily, there is an easy way to the roof from the attic, so getting out didn't require too much effort. Getting down was a bit harder, but the old lattice on the back wall held my weight with only minor protest. Looking around though, wow, I'm gonna have to explain. My creator has cut corners making me, but has put in enough safeguards to at least make sure I get a chance to get my mission, twisted as it may be, done. What I saw when I looked around were large swaths of my vision taken up with what looked like massive black, infinitely extending stalactites, stalagmites and webs of all shapes and sizes, blocking streets, houses, and even just random paths. A competent creator would have been able to give me various extra senses or organs to make sure I wasn't seen or captured. Mine chose a quicker and dirtier route. Those voids represent the lines of sight and hearing of things likely to take umbrage at a sentient doll. They pulse and shift, showing whatever spell is driving them is not very exact. And I physically cannot cross them. I see a moderately clear path to a home I can actually see and decide to make my way there. I make my way there in a series of jerking, non-ergonomic movements, avoiding thin webs of void by ducking, twisting, and contorting myself in ways no human could. As I look into the distance, I notice more and more void until the horizon is just a vantablack sheet. I'm guessing I have a maximum range of some form. I take a moment to think how disturbing my movement would look should anyone be able to see me. Not that I'd make a very comforting sight walking in any fashion. I easily climb the fence leading into the backyard. I hear no one in the home and I start to crawl my way up to the garage, hoping to find some tools or a firearm I could take back to begin a stockpile. I must have been too concerned with wedging my way between the sight lines, as I only noticed the heavy breathing once it was 25 feet away. A thick-built bulldog easily matching my 90 pounds stands there growling. I have no time to think about the situation as it charges me. I force myself through the void webs as fast as I can. The dog inches behind me, and I almost make it to the fence before it clamps its massive wizard sleeve of a face onto my leg. No meat in there, thankfully, and for all her faults, the creator did give me enough reinforcement to deal with something like this. It's not going to be removing any of my parts. That being said, leverage, momentum, and I'm guessing steroids are letting it toss me around like a, no pun intended, ragdoll. Intentionally or not, it starts to slam me against the fence. That hurts in a hurry. I feel the shock in the fleshy parts of me as I'm slammed over and over again into the solid wood. Animal lovers skip ahead a couple paragraphs. I try and get one of my blades out, but find out they must be more mechanical than mystical. As I get slammed into the wall, the mechanism that retracts them keeps engaging, making them next to useless. So instead I go caveman, no tools, no mercy. I reach out and sink my ceramic fingers deep into the dog's eye. They might not be made for calligraphy, but they do this kind of work just fine. My momentum tears the eye from its socket and the dog howls in pain, launching me in a high arc over the fence, followed by a thin spray of dog blood and ocular fluid. The void webs hit me as hard as any real obstacle, and I go on a spinning, erratic path, bouncing and tumbling as I land. I try to stop myself, but I'm in a supremely uncontrolled landing, going down a hill, judging by the fact I seem to be gaining speed instead of losing it. I can't get my bearings until I slam to an instant stop against a massive tree. I'm physically fine, but have no idea where the hell I ended up besides quite a ways into a scraggly forest. I look around, trying to find a way back to my attic, but between the trees and the void webs, I can see just about nothing past the treeline. I attempt a series of frustrated cursing. It's expressed as a series of gurgles, growls, and clicking noises. I pick a direction and begin to walk, figuring, even at my stature, this forest cannot be that expansive. The branches and litter are thankfully less of a pain in the ass than the void webs, but being 3 foot something and mostly head doesn't make for an easy time navigating undergrowth. I hear something in the distance, muffled noises, leaves rustling, branches breaking. My original idea is that I found a couple of folks engaged in a semi-public tryst. Thinking to follow them out after their congress, I make my way toward the sounds. What I saw was most certainly not folks getting ready to bang. 2 sentient things stand in front of me after a few minutes of walking toward the noises. One is a rather nondescript man, mid-20s, curly hair, and trying his best to scream while being held by the face by the second entity. It stood 9 feet tall, lanky, pale, with clear red claws that would give hunting knives feelings of inadequacy. Its face looks long and featureless at first, but as I look close, its features are just moved significantly low on its face. Eyes starting where a mouth would be, and a thin, massive set of lips starting right below its neck. It wore a torn and faded brown suit that covered maybe halfway down its limbs, and left vast swaths of its pale flesh exposed. As it moved, it appeared to leave smoke trails, but instead of dissipating, it fell, snow-like, to the ground. For some reason, it reminded me of cotton candy. "The hell?" it says in a suitably dark and breathless voice. Its head turns 180 degrees to face me. "For the love of, are you a golem or a homunculus?" it asks me. I fall to the ground, doing a perfect imitation of a normal doll, albeit too late. "What? I just watched you do that. I know you're alive." I stay still for another couple of moments, bluffing. "For the record, I'm embarrassed for you," he finishes. I give in, standing up and brushing myself off. "Golem, I think," I say, walking over. The man the massive creature is holding starts to scream louder as he sees me enter his already fatal situation. "You think? What kind of answer is that? Is there a chunk of flesh in there? And if so, is it human?" He seems a little annoyed but not aggressive. Something hits me. "How did you just understand me?" I say, accidentally avoiding his actual question. "How did I not? You have a bit of a construct accent, but it's English. Seriously though, you have some human chunks in there? Kind of time sensitive here," he says, gesturing to the man he is holding. "Yeah, brain, eyes, some muscles, about 90 pounds-ish worth," I say tentatively. "For Christ's sake." "Well, first off, that makes you a homunculus, not a golem. Which makes what I'm doing here just fucking useless." The elongated creature puts the man down. "Okay, buddy, you are probably the luckiest person on earth. You see that little guy? He just made eating you useless to me. I could kill you, but honestly it's a time waster at this point. So I'm letting you go. Now if you get any cute ideas about telling folks about this, or coming after me, I want to show you something that will make you think twice before taking that course of action." At this point, the suit-wearing thing grabs the man's arm and twists. The bones splinter and pop out at random angles in a burst of fat and blood. The man screams for a second before the creature puts its face inches from his, silencing him simply by placing one razor-sharp crystalline claw on the man's lips. You humans have short memories, and chances are after a few months you'd have done something stupid. But remember how this felt, how easily I broke you, but more importantly, after you eat this. The creature produces an old-looking hard candy in a red and green wrapper, and your flesh knits itself better than any surgeon could. Remember that is the least of my power. I don't need to rend you. I could tear your body and soul apart from across the fucking world if you piss me off. Now run. It finishes roughly shoving the man away. The man doesn't look back, and within a few seconds is lost within the forest. So, what brings you out here ruining my dinner? Name's Kez, by the way, the creature says, taking a seat on a fallen tree. I know this might not have been the smartest thing to do, but I told him the entire story, as much as I physically could anyway. He could probably destroy me if he wanted to, and didn't seem too desperate for details, so I figured I could trust him. Okay, and after all that, your plan is to try and, be some kind of nice guy? Why? Kez says, amused and shaking his head. Why not? I say as a choking cough. The fact you literally run on killing innocent folk? See, if you were a golem, you could screw off, go set up a donut shop in Alaska with the right plan. But you've been given a little more energy than your job requires, but after that, barring some maintenance, you burn out if you don't get some notches on your blade. And in your case, they need to be innocent and preferably kids. Kez lights up a cigarette, which is ironic considering the dumb-ass legends centering around my breed. I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Besides stature, nothing's stopping me from taking out the things in my house. I say with unearned confidence. Someone was listening to a podcast when they made you, weren't they? I got no love for Malignant though. That's the big things that Priest is bringing in. What he is? God, no idea, probably just some try-hard human who is fucking around with the void. But if he thinks he is going to control those things forever, he's an idiot. I don't want to get involved, but I have some advice. The guy in the basement, we call them heroes, they are mysterious, but they tend to have just a little touch of the void themselves. Explains that leg of his, probably made it himself. You want to buff up? Kill him and kill him slow. And take this meeting place for our kind, the flea market. If you can't find something there for pest removal, you just didn't bring enough to trade. He gives me a gold card with an address on it. Can I ask you for one last favor? A ride home, for lack of a better term. I say, raising my hands like a toddler. He sighs as he picks me up. We both remain silent as he drops me into the backyard of the house I'm tethered to for the next decade. A quick climb and I'm back into the attic, doing my best to remove the dirt, blood, and debris from my clothing. I barely get 5 minutes before I hear the screams of multiple people from the basement. I'm beginning to know every twist and turn of the vents, and am down silently and quickly enough to see the giant Malignant drag 2 people into the room where the hero is still tied to the chair, clinging to life. The bishop follows close behind, a massive rotten-toothed grin spreading on his face. You thought I wouldn't go looking for your backup, kid? The bishop says, shaking his head. The 2 people look to be in their mid-20s, twin buff guys dressed in camo pants and black shirts. They are badly beaten but still alive. We're sorry, man, he came up out of nowhere. The one on the left says to the hero. The bishop cracks one of his tentacles like a whip, and a massive strip of flesh is flensed from the chest of the twin that spoke. I'd say shut up and I'd make this easier, but I won't. Talk again and I go after that mother of yours in Hammersmith you think is safe. Choir boy, you've been here before, haven't you? 2 friends, you helpless. Me having the time of my life. But you thought this time would be different. You and your special leg. The bishop laughs long past the point of humor. I'm not dead yet. the hero says, staring at the ground. But you know what's coming, and that's even better. So, same choice as last time. Do you do it or I do it? The bishop slowly draws out this sentence as his rictus grin spreads further than humanly possible. Same answer as last time, go fuck yourself, with a side order of, you better kill me. You would boot? Horse meat eating, tulip fucker. The hero says, his gaze never leaving the floor. Thought you would have learned by now. Very well, but you get to watch. The bishop says as the giant malignant walks behind the hero. It yanks his head upward, and with two massive fingers pulls back the hero's eyelids until drops of blood start to drip from the torn sides. The bishop starts to chant in a language that speaks to that eldritch, unnatural part of me as he walks to stand in front of the hero, one of the twins on either side. As he begins to chant louder, I can see horrific, bulbous forms start to strain from within the twin's stomach. They double over but are held aloft via forces I cannot see. The twins' bones start to snap and deform, creating spines, hooks, and horns. The men are crying at this point, and amazingly still trying to apologize to the hero. Their fluids pool on the floor and start to run in rivulets to form twisting, looping symbols that beg me to join in the slaughter. As his chant reaches a crescendo, the bishop rams his hands down the throats of the twins. Jaws buckling, throats tearing, eyes straining to stay in deformed skulls. He yanks his hands backward, and in a spray of gore and gray swirling mist, both men are violently turned inside out. Their bodies hit the ground with the wet thump of dead flesh. But not for long. Slowly the twins rise, reborn as horrors of raw muscle and bone shards, leather organs wrapped around them like armor. Their eyes, though, they retain a scared, panic-stricken look. Same as before, choir boy. You couldn't do it, so I did. And now, not only did you lose 2 friends, I got 2 friends. The bishop says as the twins move behind him. The massive cherubic malignant lets the hero's head fall. I hear nothing, but I see tears falling as freely as the blood hit the floor. I realize at this point one of the twins is looking directly at the vent I'm hiding in. I have no idea if it saw me or could communicate this fact if it did, but I scuttle as fast as possible back to the attic. I am in no rush to find out, and that leaves me here a couple days later, and with a building anxiety at this happy group kicking in the attic door. A lot to digest, I know. But what do you think? Should I accept my fate to be a killing machine? Or should I spit in the face of cold reason? And do I check out this flea market? How much can I trust Kaz? How things are progressing? In case anyone is wondering, I'm typing this from the security of the attic with my very first smartphone. Well, it's not mine per se, but it's mine now is what's important. Maybe being a bit more relaxed will let me relate myself better. I'd be a fan of that. The past few days, even by my standards, have just been odd and violent. But that part goes without saying. Looks like more and more people are trying to help me out. Much appreciated. As always, here is a little feedback for you, and a couple questions. First off, why does everyone seem to know more about this flea market than I do? I'd have thought getting things firsthand from something that looked like Pumpkinhead's church-going cousin would have put me at an advantage, but you guys seem to know what's up better than I do. I'm going to hazard a guess it has something to do with the fact that there's certain information I just can't see. That same Vantablack that blocks my travel censors out all kinds of things. I'd tell you what, but you know the worst part of censorship is, doesn't seem to work with second-hand info though? Not yet anyway. I'm chalking that up to my creator's community college level sorcery skills. So please, if you know something I don't, pass it on. Second, you guys seem to have some pretty high hopes for my morals. I expected a group of random folks to be telling me to slaughter the neighborhood with the hero skull for shits and giggles. But it seems things have gotten a little less edgy since the 90s. Probably not a bad thing. Lastly, you guys seem to think Kaz can help me out quite a bit. Got to say, he did seem like fear incarnate. I'll keep that in mind. If I missed you, It's probably because I took your advice, and I'll be getting to it in a minute. The headline of the past couple weeks is the entire goon squad piling into their literal hearse and taking off. The bishop seemed to have packed a couple suitcases, so I assumed I was going to have a few days at least. But to play it safe, I spent the first day in the attic. I'm still nervous about the glance the twin and I exchanged, and not about to get caught in a trap invented by paranoid parents. A little after 1 on the second night, I hear what I initially think is the bishop and the 3 pawns. Better name? Worse. But as I focus, I hear 5 voices whispering, and most certainly sounding like nothing that stalks the night with any degree of real skill. A window breaks, and I smell it. I know most of you guys think of me as a good guy. I mean, I'm pretty sure someone is working on making a plush or a body pillow of me as we speak. I have so many questions about fads in 2024, but there are going to be times you get a deep, uncomfortable look into the vile crap hastily sewn together that is me. This is one of those times. What I smelled was innocence, and with it, I gained an understanding. A look into what my base drive is. I'd love to say I didn't like it, to say I felt it was a vile compulsion, but the truth is, that's not how it feels. It's exciting, it's primal, and on a very real level it feeds me. With that first whiff, I understood innocence. It's not being perfect, or young, chaste, or naive. It's complicated, of course, but at its core it's doing things for the right reasons. Having that spark of human kindness, loyalty, and selflessness even among flaws that may appear irredeemable to some. 2 of those men had it. 3 of those men were acceptable collateral damage. Nothing in me, meat, cloth, or magic feels any differently. I respect you all too much to lie. I start to salivate, the fluid pooling and dripping out of the bottom of my ceramic head. I feel power, I feel confidence. It's dark. It's my house. They're not demons or heroes, just meat. I can feel my body twitch and thrum like a guitar string as they come into the house one by one. They split up, trying to ransack the place as quickly as they can. I laugh. A clicking, phlegmatic sound I find myself hoping they can hear as I run toward a vent, jumping down into it with no regard for the minor noise I make. In fact, I extend one blade and drag it along the duct. As they hear the sound, I can feel their fear. I can feel where they are like a hellish radar. The closest to me has no innocence to him. I smell crimes committed for pure greed and rage. That doesn't matter though. I need to warm up. I've spent so much time sneaking and cowering. I need to see what I can do. I settle myself enough to open the vent without attracting attention. The large, mask-wearing man rifles through drawers, looking frustrated as he finds nothing better than 25-year-old computer errata. My limbs move almost of their own accord. I climb with a spider's grace directly above the man. There would have been a million ways to drop on him and kill him in an instant, but my mind went to none of those. Instead, I let the ceramic headpiece unfold. Thick red-gray saliva hits the top of his mask. He jumps and turns toward the ceiling, shining a high-powered flashlight in my face. It doesn't matter. I know exactly where he is, and I get a giddy charge from the burst of fear that runs through his body as he sees my face. I let go and extend both of my blades. Nothing to hack down a demon, but stout and sharp enough to slide easily through the man's eyes, the sockets behind them, and, propelled by my momentum, the brain behind that. He makes no noise, but both of our bodies hitting the floor most certainly does. I rip my arms, shoulder deep in gore, out of his head and take a moment to admire the spewing cavern of his face. I hear another man come running. Another empty snack, but I'm more than eager to whet my appetite. I run to the door and place my back to the wall beside it. The second man, a wiry guy in his 40s, wearing no mask but a mustache that would have been at home back in '93, walks by me and screams as he sees his compatriot. I walk behind him and drive both blades tip down into his Achilles tendons. Putting all my weight and strength into it, I tear upward, the blades catching flesh, tendon and fat, and tearing them out as a formless lump. He hits the ground, wailing in terror and pain. I can hear one of the group immediately leave his compatriots. I'm angered as I feel it was one of the innocent. I take this out on the thief screaming on the ground. I climb his body facing the door. I'm stunned at how easy these instincts come to me, and at how much I'm loving this. It's like a hard drug. It scares the hell out of me, but I need it. He tries to see what's on his back, but he has no leverage to throw me off. I vent my rage by stabbing, randomly, almost playfully up and down his torso. By the time the last two enter, he isn't dead, but he isn't coming back. I stare at the two men as I petulantly stab a last 3 times, shut the headpiece with a snap, and leap with greased eel speed into a floor vent. They scream at the situation, at each other, at their dying friend. And I hear the telltale noise of a gun cocking. I'm not scared. It makes me laugh. I let the sound echo through the vents as I move randomly, stoking their fear, their paranoia. I stop and watch them back down the hallway from a ceiling vent. I pant with anticipation as I confirm the innocent has the gun. I scrape the knife, herding them to the top of the stairs. The gun-toting buffet fires randomly, coming nowhere close to hitting me. I move to a vent between the two, letting silence ring, letting them ramble possible plans and explanations to each other. I drop, putting them between myself and the stairs. With no room to aim and nerves frayed thin, the innocent man, a 23-year-old single father, working 2 jobs and doing this under duress, fires rapidly and poorly. Soup-can-sized chunks blow out of his friend's back as the bullets exit. I do nothing to speed the man's fate. I stand in the hallway, letting the young man's shock and fear marinate his coming pain. He sees me and fires his 2 remaining shots, doing nothing more than sending harmless sprays of hardwood into my mask. He's stunned, but not enough to avoid making a break for it when I start a slow walk toward him, scraping one blade along my ceramic head, making a hellish screech. He stumbles down the stairs and I leap. I overestimate my ability and land grabbing his waist from behind as opposed to his head. I jam a blade into the side of his leg with the rapidity of a sewing machine, and as that steel buries itself into his flesh, I feel it, the pain of the innocent. I don't know if I'll be able to explain this in any way that makes sense, but I'll try. You know that false rush of strength and bravado you hear cocaine users rant about? That high that makes you feel you could fight and fuck all night, likely both at the same time? Think of that, but instead of false promises you are actually stronger, faster and smarter, not just a twitchy loser who isn't making sense and can't get it up. I roar, a sound like a rock tumbler with strep throat. He tries to grab me and throw me off, but I retract a blade and grab his hand, easily twisting the wrist to such a degree the man falls to the floor. Nothing I could do before the kickstart. He tries to slam me into the ground, but I drive my legs into his back, briefly lifting him up as I move both of my hands perpendicular to the ground, parallel to my legs. I let my legs drop to the ground. The man's body falls, driving my blades through his chest. He looks to them, screaming as I find myself with the strength to throw him off of me. I don't want to sugarcoat things, but I don't want to subject you guys to too much shit either. The next 10 minutes I spent with my head unfolded eating chunks of the guy till the life finally bled from him. When the frenzy burned itself out, it was my turn to be startled. Standing in the kitchen door, leaning against the frame, holding a pistol and the phone I'm typing this on, was the hero. He didn't blink, the gun didn't waver, he simply threw the cell phone to me. It was open to a blank screen with a flashing cursor. You have about 10 seconds to tell me something that makes me not shoot you to feel better about myself. You only get that because I know you aren't working with the square head. He says, I'll spare you the part where I catch him up via the notepad. It was tense to the point where a shot was fired, but at the end of it all we realized regardless of who was lying about what. We both needed a hand. We dragged the bodies down the stairs, mostly me for obvious leg-related reasons. I find myself now a lot stronger than your average person, but I can feel that power draining by the second. By my guess, it'll be burned out within a day. Not the buff I was expecting. I'll take care of these. That salted licorice prick isn't the only one who knows how to use that microwave. Listen, I'm going to call you Punch. That all right? The hero says, taking a seat in his gore-streaked chair. As I look around the room, they did leave him 3 buckets. One contained waste, the other a pile of what was hopefully animal offal, and the third, water that wasn't much more clear than my spit. Okay, Punch, I've been burned by supernatural shit before, but what choice do I have? You ever seen The Godfather? He asks. I nod. He hands me the pistol, a large boxy black thing. Then you know what to do. I don't know how long we have, but if you're planning on going to the flea market, do it soon. Once it's go time, I'll let you know. And one more thing, if you have any ability to get me a burger, maybe a soda, I can honestly say I'll forgive the slaughter up there. He tries to be jovial, but we're both beyond that. I scavenged the cash, cell phones, and 2 more pistols from the bodies, hoping it will be enough to trade for something useful. The next night, once dark fell, I quickly looked up the address on the card, with some help from the hero. His name is Leonard, for all those wondering, and started toward it. From a distance, I saw nothing but a vacant lot across from a flea market, which made me start thinking maybe Leo didn't know how to work the phone as well as he claimed, and my destination was on the other side of the street. But as I got within a block of the lot, suddenly there was a building too tall to be held up by brick and mortar. Bricks of all types haphazardly put together, and windows ranging from idyllic home to prisons studding it randomly. Dominating the front of the building, though, was a giant LED sign flashing "Flea Market" in erratic patterns. I make my way to a massive tinted glass door that I'm unsure I can move, as the last of the innocents wore off sooner than I expected. But as I walk up, a smaller door, sized perfectly for me, appeared. This one I opened with ease. As I walked in, I suddenly felt very normal and mundane. Creatures, entities, ghosts, demons, whatever you could think of, it was walking the shoddy-looking aisles, browsing, chatting, and bargaining. Dozens of languages no human has ever spoke blended together with hundreds they have into a cacophonic din that threatened to drown out my thoughts. The air hung thick with a sweet smoke. Lights flashed. Loudspeakers screamed deals. I saw signs for weapons, food, goods, anything I could think of. But I saw something else even more important. Kaz! Over here! I screamed, seeing the Candyman a few dozen feet away. For a moment, I think I have no chance of attracting his attention. But eventually he turns around and seems to laugh and shake his head as he walks over. He takes us into a moderately more quiet part of the flea market. All kinds of entities sit at long tables eating and conversing. We sit beside a group of purple wicked-looking things eating thin strands of fluorescent foodstuffs with fingers that look like the fronds of angler fish. You little madman. You're actually going through with this? Do you even know where to go? What you are buying? He asks curiously. I'm a genius, so I guess I'll go to weapons and get a weapon. I say sarcastically. How many weapons do you think are made for lil fellas like yourself? No, you need an adult. I'll show where you can go make your bad decision. I'd be more angry at Kaz's condescension if he wasn't right. He walks me for what feels like hours to what looks like the most run-down junk shop of a stall in the place. The painted sign on wood that looks it was salvaged from the Titanic says, "Flap and Hive." The oddest odds and ends. Behind the junk-laden counter stood a massive bird-like beast. It was a deep rotten orange that reminded me of a tangerine left in a gutter. Its beak was a harsh, unnatural yellow. Its eyes, much too large for its skull, sat exposed and rolling about of their own accord on the top of its head. It was 7 feet of nightmare fuel dredged from childhood memories. I almost mistook the second entity for a piece of junk, But who am I to judge? It was a knockoff Stretch Man toy, wearing a black unitard and bloated beyond reason. It stands up and vermin scuttle from tears on its latex body. Flap and Hive, I say, trying to start things off on the right foot. We got a homunculus here, Hive. Speak slowly and don't use big words. The bird says, that's how I have to talk to you. But this is a customer. How can I help you? Ignore my friend. He seems to think his shining personality pays our rent. Hive says, I tell him my situation. Hive seems to take a special interest when I mention the malignant. He scrounged around the junk and brings out 2 items. One is a green glass eye, about sized for a doll. The other looks like a keychain with a small decorative sword on it. This eye, it'll let you go unnoticed. Not shimmering outline invisible, but unseen, unheard, and unnoticed by any sense anything has. This keychain, if you can get a malignant to touch it, I can guarantee it won't be bothering you anymore. Hyde says, there are letters on the side of the sword, Baddar. I open my bag of cash, guns and phones to a massive laugh from Flap. Shoot yourself with one of those guns, and if you survive, take that money, buy a dildo and go fuck yourself. Get out of my shop. Flap says dismissively. There is a moment of pregnant silence before Hive stretches out a limb faster than a cobra, and despite his 5-pound size, the blow sends the bird crashing to the ground. He gets up, chagrined but amazingly not hurt. That will be fine. My kind have been nothing but especially cruel to me, but I'm very limited in how I can exact my revenge. If you can put a scratch on any of them, that makes up for any loss of finance. Though there is one thing you are not going to enjoy. This eye is a part, it has to be installed. Hive says before leading me back into the shop. The room looks like a cross between a wood shop and a surgical theater. I'm strapped, completely immobile on a dark wood table. Hive brings out tools that radiate an energy that puts anything I've felt to shame. He opens my head and begins to slice, flints, and form the flesh underneath. The pain was worse than I thought possible. Worse than trauma to the meat that makes up my internals. The tools work on a level that is beyond the physical, tearing parts of my very essence to connect with the jade eye he implants in what could generously be considered my forehead. When I get off of the table, I do what Hive tells me, focusing on the eye. I see and feel myself become nothing more than the whisper of an idea of a form on the material plane. I make my way home casually, doing everything I could to try and get noticed to no avail. And that is where we are, a handful of shaky alliances, a surgery I hope has no side effects, and a keychain I've been assured kills demons. As always, I ask you guys, what do you think? I've got so many plates spinning right now, I can only hope I'm making the right choices. Before I go, I want to apologize to people that have been cheering for me. I could have just omitted the details, but you guys deserve better than that. You should know who you are helping. For all you know, it could be your future house I'm living in. I just want to say, being undetectable is exactly as fun as you'd think it is. No, I didn't do anything pervy, not really equipped for that. On that note, got to find out I don't have a digestive system either. All that flesh felt a lot worse coming up than it did going down. And I've managed to avoid doing anything evil with it. But come on, it's a fun toy to play with no matter what. I'm upbeat because I'm nervous. Currently we are hours away from go time, and overprepared is not how I describe my merry group. I'm going to tell you how we got there. But first, as always, let's see what folks have been saying. You guys have kept me alive this long. I can't turn my back on you now. To the guy who was smart enough to check his house for me, good on you, buddy. This paranormal shit tends to like coincidence and connection. And hell yes, chuck me in a furnace if you find me. This isn't some release me from my torment kind of thing either. I don't necessarily mind this. Even the parts where I'm making you folks question your support, sad to say, but I'm made to love violence. No, I just have grown to like you folks. And at the end of the day, I'm a homemade weapon that isn't going to get any safer as time goes on. Getting Kaz and Leo together? Oh, I'm on that. And there are other folks like me out there? I mean, I've met entities, obviously, but I'm assuming not everyone has its own scary story. Wonder what the common threads are. As I just said, this paranormal shit loves its connections and serendipity. Now, I took a lot of advice, and while honestly, I get the feeling having Kaz and Leo in the same room is a horrible idea, you guys seem to live and breathe this stuff almost as much as I do, so I trust you. I figured between the three of us we had enough amped up senses to hear the coffin crew coming. That sounds like a professional vaping team, I know. But I'm an evil doll, not a marketing executive. So I broached the topic of a meeting of the minds to Leo. He sat on the old leather couch in the living room, shaking his head before responding. First, it would have been smart to tell me that before I got rid of those bodies. Second, it's a horrible idea. You might be friends with that thing. But he skips lunch and suddenly I'm getting a look at my guts. Leo says, I notice he is sporting a new leg. It's quite a bit more low-tech than the first. It's clearly a leg from one of the robbers, little too long, and haphazardly reinforced with a few screws and wires, but somehow it seems to function a bit. He catches me staring. Necromancy is a neutral art. For example, if your friend was a white or something, it'd be a 50-50th chance he is an asshole or a psychopath. And besides, I know like 2 necromantic spells, it's nothing. He says a little defensively. A Candyman though? Nope, not something that's physically capable of playing well with humans. He finishes. Now there was actually a long, involved conversation via my phone on my end, in regards to relative morality, tactical risk, a balanced team, and a bunch of other dry, important topics. But for the sake of a little humor before things get morbid, pretend it was a star wipe into Kaz and Leo arguing. You want to bring another malignant into this situation? Really? Leo yells, sarcastically chuckling. Yes, actually, he owes me a favor and could level a city block if he really wanted to. Kaz retorts. That makes me feel the opposite of better. My issue isn't with lack of punch, it's with something that can level a city block inserting itself into an already high-stakes situation. Leo says, slowly trying to remain calm. Oh, and your alt-right tinfoil hat-wearing, lizard-person-fearing gun nut is a better option? Kaz spits. You don't know anything about him, sugar nuts. He's a graysmith, he's not some militia asshole. He makes the shit that lets people like me survive things like you. Leo says in a condescending fashion. I know his type, got sick of supplying regular people with regular ways to kill each other. Needed more of a thrill, so he started using powers beyond his grasp to make worse things to sell to more unstable people. Let me guess, Alex Jones fan? 10 guns in every room. Gets paid in Bitcoin. Isn't racist. Am I close? I bet I'm close. And that Graysmith name? Half of them aren't even Graysmiths and half of those who are just genocidal twats. Kaz's massive mouth extends into a shoulder-to-shoulder smirk. Leo takes a step forward. I stomp my feet on the ground to get their attention, hoping to stop the situation going tribal. Maybe we don't even need backup. The chest could change things. I add, trying to defuse the situation. For the love of, have you not seen the pattern? Whoever made you skipped class half the time by the looks of it. That trunk, it's gonna have some spooky semi-functional garbage that's gonna make you look real edgy but not do jack shit. Leo waves his hand dismissively as he says this. Yes, all problems just need a bigger gun with more blades welded to it, right? Kaz goes to say more and I stop him with a kick to the shin. He looks to me, face full of rage. The adults are talking. Just stay out of it, you goddamned pipe bomb. Kaz screams and suddenly both him and Leo go silent. Leo breaks the silence first, giggling, then chuckling, then full-on collapsing on the couch with fits of laughter. All the time Kaz is suddenly apologizing profusely. Look at Mr. Monster Pride. Mr. We have just as valid of a society, dropping P-bombs like they are going out of style. Leo cannot continue as he starts laughing again. I'm sorry, I'm old. I'm frustrated. I'm in over my head just as much as anyone else here. That's not who I am. We aren't in the 1800s anymore, I know. I'm sorry. 'Cause won't meet my eyes. I'm not offended, but at least this seems to be calming things down. Oh my God. I can't stop laughing. Maybe you have a little human in you after all. Dice Clay here, not giving a shit what people think. How about we try the trunk? At least that will take an option off the table. Leo says, wiping tears from his eyes. Leo and Kez brought the trunk down to the basement. And despite the fact that it fit in the microwave thing, turning it on did nothing more than give us all sudden suicidal thoughts. Kez acquiesced and let Leo call his friend J.P. When this gentleman showed up, I thought maybe Kez had precognition in his bag of tricks. He was in his mid-40s, wearing brown cargo pants and a Deus Vault sleeveless shirt. He was bald, likely not by choice, with a muffin top and pair of Dr. Martin boots. I didn't see a tinfoil hat, but the giant joint in his ear was a good substitute, and his thick leather bracelets screamed of compensation. Holy fuck. Never thought I'd see one of you up close, JP says, poking Kaz. Could we move this along, sir? Kaz says, holding back rage. JP puts down a large black suitcase, opens it, and lights the joint. After this, he takes an odd obsidian tool, reminiscent of an awl, in his free hand and starts prodding the lock. Put that out. If this place smells like a stoner's armpit, it's going to give us away, JP, and you've already made it smell like an armpit. Leo chides his friend. Half of this is an anti-void herbal mixture, which costs 10 times what the weed did. Personally, I'd rather make sure we aren't being watched. But that's just crazy old JP, who everyone seems to need. JP blows the smoke directly at Leo. After a few hours and a lot of borderline not okay conversations about minorities, he manages to pop the trunk open. There were 2 black leather bags in the box. The first we open is exactly what Leo thought. A couple heavier blades, a steel top hat with a sharpened rim, and a bunch of other regular flea market crap. The second had a small sheet of paper taped to it. The beautiful cursive writing read as follows. M-Fused Alchemical Homunculus Proxy. Prototype 2. Dear Milford, this isn't to be used unless the mission is in severe danger. It's untested, but should be more than enough to cut down a few armed humans between you and the kid. Love, Angela. The thing inside made me look downright comforting. It was 4 feet of black and white mange-ridden fur. I recognized it immediately as Sammy the Skunk brand doll. It was popular in the 90s. Its shtick was it used pre-recorded tapes to mimic talking. But this one was not factory standard. All its joints were enforced with overlapping bone. It had long pointed teeth, obviously ripped from some predator, and behind the tail, where the tape deck should be, were racks of multicolored fluids. The tail itself was studded with blades that were rivaled only by the conical claws on its hands and feet. Instinctively, I found a deep red on button, and as I pressed it, I felt my mind thin and stretch, some vital part of me siphoned off. It was disorienting for a minute, but I quickly adapted and found myself in control of the contraption. Most of its functions were done automatically. All I had to do was will it a bit one way or the other. I wasn't a fighter ace, but after a couple hours I was confident I could point it in the right direction and scream kill with a degree of efficiency. We had a sparring match. JP's payment for opening the trunk was to watch. Between me controlling the skunk and Kaz. I didn't win, but it was a hard-fought tie. Much more than I'd be capable of unaided. We brought the contents of the trunk up to the attic, and as I shut down the skunk, my mind started going back to full speed. Kaz gave me his number for when it was go time, and promised to have his backup on speed dial. Additionally, he promised Leo something to remedy his leg situation when he came by. Does anyone else feel things have been going uncharacteristically good for me so far? Don't worry, it changes. Leo and I repair the house to what we hope is an identical state. I spend my free time practicing with the proxy and trying out the little baubles that came with it. But the one-eyed wonder weasel and his 3 balls came back in the wee hours one morning. And they brought company. About 24 20-somethings all wearing identical sweatpants and yellow shirts. They're hurt and arrive in for hearses driven by the Lovecraft lads. I like that one. How about you guys? All of them bleeding and missing pieces. They shuffle in a single file line into the basement. For a minute, I wonder how the bishop has the balls to do this in the open, but then I see faint shimmering around the group. Context dictates to me no one that isn't supposed to see these guys is going to. I flick on my own invisibility and trust in it to let me follow directly behind them. I get a feeling that something very bad is going down and want to be able to get Kaz involved as quickly as possible. The bishop and the malignant herd them into a room that has no business being as large as it is. From the ceiling are enough thin wires to wrap around the midsection of each human. They feed through rusted pulleys and hooks to a handle made of several fused ribs. The evil pricks tie the wires around the stomachs of the victims, one by one, chittering, laughing, and taking the odd piece of flesh, terrifying the sacrifices beyond reason. Some beg, some plead, some offer to serve. None are listened to. Lastly, they drag Leo into the center of the room, directly in front of the bishop. Didn't even have the guts to kill yourself, eh? Well, you get to see, once again, how you thinkin' you are the man with the big balls gets people killed. The bishop says. He starts to chant. A breeze from nowhere starts to stir the room as the bishop begins to pull on the handle. The victims raise, wires digging inch by inch into them. He starts to get louder, punctuating his incantation by roughly jerking the handle, adding a burst of volume and raining gore that sends an arctic blast through the room. As the victims reach the ceiling, hoarfrost begins to cover every surface in the room. With a final massive tug, he bisects the victims in unison. More gore than is possible rains down. Minutes of blood and bones storming in the room before leaving an eerie silence broken only by erratic drops. In the room stand 20 impish creatures. 3 feet of boils, pus, and more clawed appendages than any creature strictly needs. Their charcoal gray skin undulates with ropey muscle, and their stench is sulfur and iron. 2 more things, choir boy. The bishop says. The first is that was the last thing you'll ever see. Abruptly, he rips the remaining eye from Leo's head and starts examining it. He squeezes a bit, and suddenly a white-hot flare of fire and arcing static shoots from the eye. That would have been helpful, wouldn't it? For the record, shot to the head with that, you'd be walking out. That second thing, though. The bishop lowers his voice, putting his face next to Leo's ear. You never bothered to check for security cameras. You oblivious fucking child. I've been watching. I run, getting to the attic and dialing Kaz as soon as I can. And that's where I am. I guess if this goes as bad as it's looking, this will be the last you hear from me. But by all means, I'm in need of any advice you have left to give, and I'll be checking the comments till I have to man up. If this is goodbye though, watch out for the shit that goes bump in the night. The smarter than you can imagine and scarier than you've read. You know what my favorite part of it all was, choir boy? Watching your brain start to turn on itself. Watching you talk to thin air, hide bodies, convince yourself something else murdered those intruders. It was beautiful. When you called in a sneepman to try and get you free, that was my favorite. Your ancestors must be spinning in their graves. Wish I got an angle on how you killed those burglars, but that's the way the cookie crumbles, I guess. I hear the bishop gloat through the vents. When I heard cameras, I was confused. Last time I checked, they were loud things the size of bricks, cost upwards of $5,000, and were installed in banks and dangerous party stores. If I could smile, I would be. I wasn't made as early as I'd been assuming. My creator, half-assed as she may be, had cameras in mind. Think back to when I was trying to work through the Vantablack barriers. Today, from what I've read, cameras are everywhere. Whoever my creator is, she had that in mind. I don't think cameras can see me. My body rattles slightly, fear and panic trying to force rational through from my stitched-together mind. I send Kez a text, not willing to risk calling. Bishop had the place wired up with cameras. Knows about you but not me. Do not come. Walking into a trap. Don't know how much he knows. I type. The minutes before the reply feel like days. Get out now. It won't be long before he figures out Leo wasn't hallucinating. Is Kez reply. Unfeeling monster is a cliché so overused. Just reading that probably made you skip a paragraph. From personal experience, I can tell you it's total horseshit. I'm by any metric a monster. I own that. But the fear I felt trying to get out of that house, it was real. Every tiny footfall sounded like a gunshot. Every rustling leaf, every cough I could hear from a block away, it invoked a sense of dread. At any moment I knew I would suddenly feel a tentacle wrap around me and be dragged back into that house. But eventually, I found myself standing at the door to an upscale candy shop in a very downtrodden neighborhood. There was a sign that was yellowed and curled from time and light. Written in immaculate cursive was closed for family emergency. Kez lets me in, and as the door closes I stand in shock. The first thing that hits me is the smell. I'll be the first to admit, spilled blood gets my engine running, but the rotten, nearly tactile reek of decaying flesh makes my vestigial digestive system try to run in reverse. Then I see it. Bodies half-rotten and cocooned in some kind of wispy, tarry, black substance. I know I shouldn't have been shocked. I'm in a world of blood and magic. But I guess I gotten to think of Kez as just a nice guy. A regrettable part of being who I am. Kez offers by way of an explanation. I can't shake the shock. I know it's hypocritical as hell, but the desecration of the bodies, the serial killer vibe of it all, I can't let it go. What do we do now? I say, still staring at the corpse collection. We tried things Leo's way, now we tap our world. Kez says, there's a tone of trepidation in his voice. Why do you sound like you hate that idea? I ask, noticing one corpse is still moving slightly. Punch, you me Leo, we are the odd men out. What you are staring at is me making a half-dozen kills last a decade. I'm starving constantly. I'm poor and I'm isolated. All it would take to remedy all of these issues is to spill some more blood and ruin a few more lives. I can still smell the shame on you from killing those people. I can smell the fear of what you could become. And Leo, that guy is a strange duck just based on the fact he was willing to have a conversation with us. He can hide it behind all of the Archie Bunker type attitude he wants, but he's one of the good ones. In our world, it's hard to be strange, ironic as that may be. The society behind society runs on rules, ritual, and tradition. Reaching out for help isn't going to be as simply as you think. Kez admits, what am I not getting? I ask impatiently. You are an experiment, Leo is a soldier, I'm an oddity. The only person I can think of that can help is a demon. Kez says, sitting in a somehow clean leather office chair. Demon as in pitchforks and red skin? From the Bible? How's something like that possible? Question, not quite buying it. No pitchfork, no red skin, think more biblically accurate. And as to how that book can hold weight in a world like ours. If something is powerful enough to fit the description and chooses to make the effort to, I don't think it matters much. I don't know if there is a God, Abrahamic or no, but I've met my share of demons, is Kez's answer. A few phone calls later and we find ourselves standing at the door of what looks to be an active meatpacking plant. Pretty much the opposite of the rust-flecked, ominous structure you'd guess. Well-lit, active, and with security manning several guard stations. Kaz carries me, sneaking to the complex in the middle of the night seems old hat to him. The young, dark-skinned man working the booth doesn't so much as blink when he sees the collection of horrifying features Kaz calls a face. First floor, back corner, east side. Boss wanted me to say, "If you're not early, you're late." The man says, almost bored. I don't like the nervous body language I see in Kaz. A metal gate that's pristine looking but squeaks open nonetheless lets us through. Have you ever wandered into the wrong part of a town you've never been to? I'm not talking somewhere you've been mugged or had a bad experience, but one of those places where bad things happen so deep in the shadows they stay there. It has a feeling, doesn't it? A sense of violence and danger beyond any obvious signs. That's what this place feels like. And all those little bits and bobs of the arcane that make me more than a garage sale fine thrum with the evil energy permeating it. A massive metal roll-up gate takes its time to reveal what I'll start by describing as something man-shaped. It has a grin, the kind of hateful rictus mask that seems to escape the edges of its malformed skull. Its eyes are sunken back, scrutinizing from deep within black pits. The yellowed, dry flesh around them cracked and bleeding, as if trying to contain something within. Black claw-like nails, corpse pallor skin. The thing stood nearly 8 feet tall. A parody of the human form. For a second, I look at it with my new eye. The hardware has no problem discerning what's in front of me. It transmits the signal to a mind that's still nothing more than meat. Burning pain. A nonsensical image that sits at the front of my brain like a fresh brand. And the knowledge. The horrible, fucking knowledge. Seeing what it was, truly, even for the briefest of moments, it's not something you shake off. When I go back to looking at the lumpen, terrifying thing in front of me, I understand it's nothing more than the demon's way of communicating with us. A minor, almost vestigial appendage that lets us beg at its feet. Kaz, you old motherfucker, it's been a while, and you brought me a gift. The thing says, pointing to me. This deep voice has a command that goes beyond charisma. No pie, this is a friend of mine. I didn't know how cultured your workers may have been, so I played things subtle. Kaz responds, letting go of me. Well, come in, have a look at the new digs. Let's see what I can do for you. Pi says, motioning us inside the massive building. At first things look normal, just about what you'd expect from a meatpacking plant. But the second that roll-down door shut, it was like a switch flipped. Suddenly all around me are cultists and victims. Dozens of people, strapped down or hanging from bloody hooks. Cultists cutting, burning, chanting and flensing. One massive ongoing ritual. The floor is covered in a 1/4 inch of blood. Hunched-backed cultist mill about mopping and attempting to minimize the offal and fluids on the floor. The cultists give Pi a wide berth, and seem not show no surprise at either Kaz or myself. Screams ring out as Pi walks us back to a modular office. The carpet is pure white, and as Pi opens the door, 2 cults scramble to place thick disposable towels under our feet as we enter. Once we're seated, the cultists stand, motionless at the side of the room, masked and seeming more like furniture than people. It takes me a moment to notice the bound, shirtless, pale man in the corner. There is terror in his eyes and fresh wounds over his malnourished body. His face has jester's makeup either branded or newly tattooed on it. Who's that? Kaz says casually, pointing to the bound man. That's the meat puppet the last scraps of Jack the Ripper escaped into. Been a hell of a time trying to get Ol Demetrius out, but we're making progress. Pi explains as the man tries to scream and plead through a blood-stained ball gag. I thought he was dead 10 times over. Crafty old lich. Kaz replies. Me too. Looking to get some favors out of this situation. Speaking of favors, what do you need, Kaz? Pi asks. I can tell something about the demon's tone is making Kaz nervous. Nothing I'm not ready and willing to pay for in full. Kaz says, right, let no one say you don't pay your debts. But I have to ask, what's the nature of the request? Is this another one of your pet projects? Pai's tone gets somewhat sinister as he talks. I've crossed paths with a malignant that is not receptive to reason. I need someone who can make a stronger case than myself. Kaz replies, dodging the question. Pai takes a long inhale, tension builds. Kaz, I like you. We've known each other for over a century. The thing is, when you come to me, it's never for things that will advance the cause. You never want to expand your domain or cause chaos. Kaz, my friend, you've gotten boring. We are here for very specific reasons, and the more I think of it, the more it offends me you want to pretend that isn't the case. Pai is locking eyes with Kaz as he talks. Pai, what's all this? You know me, I don't want to have to be butting heads with the likes of you to try and gain position. Kaz sounds nervous. With what's coming down the pipe, I don't know if attitudes like yours will be very helpful. Walk with me, Kaz. Pai stands as he says this. As I hop from the white leather chair to join him in Kaz, a single drop of blood falls from my shoe, hitting the plush, pristine carpet. A cultist tries to dive and catch it, towel held out, but fails. He's shaking and frozen with fear as Pai looks over. To call what that masked person received a beating would be vastly understating things. Bones break under an inhuman torrent of blows. Sick joy spreads across Pai's face as he leaves the cultists damned to a slow, brutal death on the floor. Pai leads us out a door in the back of an office, and we are standing in a long, wide hallway. On either side of us cells. Thick iron bars, some etched with runes and shifting symbols, cage in things more and less than human. All hurt, screaming, and trying their best to escape. On the horizon is a war. One that will make the battle between heaven and hell look like a bar fight. Those that survive will be the strong, those with power and cunning. And they will need soldiers. Willing or no, this will be my army. Pai says, gesturing to those in the cages around him. Pai, if I've done anything to offend, or came at the wrong time, I apologize. I'll be on my way, I didn't mean to impose. Kaz says, trying to stop what feels like a very bad situation. Pai stops and stands silent. Kaz, you don't get to back out of a deal. You know this. You get your favor, but I want more than just compensation. I want to see that you still have that drive, that spark. I want to see that you are someone who deserves to survive. Give me the pipe bomb. Haven't been able to acquire one of my own, and I have a feeling the cultists could figure out a lot if they could pull it apart. As Pai makes his demand, my heart sinks. If I could sweat, I'd be soaked. Kaz attempts to laugh things off. He's more than just a construct. The creator left a lot of personality in there, and he's a friend of mine. I can have you a handful of humans in an hour or so. Kaz offers. You know who's my friend, Kaz? The bishop. And you coming to me asking me to intervene puts me in an awkward situation. I don't need more meat. I have more than I know what to do with. I need your little friend. Those are my terms. Pai turns around. The screams from the cells echo, providing hellish background music. Kaz, I've got this. Out of the two of us, you are more likely to pull things off. And to be honest, maybe I'm sick of having a 90s slacker mind and 90s slasher urges. I mean what I say, but it doesn't make the terror any less. The pipe bomb gets it. Now, what do you need, Kaz? Pai asks. Kaz looks to me, guilt and shame on his face. He then turns toward Pai. The bishop is planning something large, and he has a friend of mine. I need the man saved, and the malignant dissuaded from his current course of action. Kaz's monotone defeated. Pai begins to laugh, an otherworldly sound that full of hate, that comes from every angle. When he stops, his voice is thick with rage and evil. Didn't believe it when I heard. thought there had to be more to things. But I just wanted to hear it with my own ears, or as close as I can get anyway. You sad, broken failure. You twisted little runt. You had so much potential, so much power and promise. But it's wasted. You come here and ask of me on the dawn of war to provide aid and succor to the line of those that have hunted us since time began. You're dead to me, Kez. The door to the cell to our left slowly creaks open of its own accord. Don't make me ask. Pi says, by way of demand. We don't. The sense of rising evil and power all around us is plenty of incentive to not argue. Other than the cultists, we see individuals in black security gear. All of them seem slightly off. We quickly realize it's the guards. All tainted by Pi's essence. Within an hour, a gurney is wheeled in by 2 guards and a 3-eyed humanoid in medical garb. You'd think being resilient to harm would be nothing but a boon. I can't think of anyone who wouldn't want to be able to shrug off a shotgun blast. One thing I bet none of you have thought about is just how much worse this could make torture. They rip, burn, and tear at K's form. The surgeon is an artist of pain, using equipment that ranges from surgical to industrial to decimate my friend. Kaz screams, loud enough to rattle the bars of the cell. The noise in any other context would be blood-curdling, the type of hollow bellow that would make grown men afraid of the dark. But here, all it means is pain and betrayal. When they finish, they toss Kaz's broken form on the ground like so much garbage. He's alive, but one hand isn't coming back, and his body is hastily knitting together enough broken bones to make him sound like a thawing pond. Snickering, the guards leave us in the gore-stained cell. I can't focus as conflicting thoughts, urges, and feelings hit me all at once. I'm enthralled by the violence in the warehouse, scared witless by the situation we're in, and on some small, deep-buried level wanting to pledge myself to Pi. At first I think the vibrating is my heart, that the stress of everything has finally gotten to me, and I'm going to die, less like Chucky and more like Fred Sanford. But I don't have a heart. Literally anyway. As the fear and panic begins to dull, I realize it's my phone. And much to my surprise, the demon betrays you. I hear JP say after I've accepted the call, "You've got some surveillance equipment in you, little fella. Outdated enough I've been able to keep an eye on you guys. Figured you'd try and stab Leo in the back eventually. Can you bust us out?" I text back, "Oh fuck no. First off, I'm not risking my life for the likes of you two. And more to the point, the Graysmiths aren't soldiers. We have connections, knowledge, we make things, but I'm not Leo. Did you see a tall, thin guy, maybe in clown makeup?" JP asks. "Yeah, but he didn't look in any state to fight." I reply. JP snickers. "He wouldn't, your buddy has been putting him through the ringer. But that Pagliacci-looking fuck is sitting on more power than he knows. I've got a man on the inside that can get him free and give him a box of some of my best party favors. He should be able to create enough of a shitstorm for you two to sneak out and the 3 of us to get Leo. Once he does though, your buddy, he's going to go scorched earth. That place is going to turn into Lovecraft's wet dream. Beyond that, those people, the victims, half will probably snap and the rest, well, they won't see you as any different than any of the other evil shit there. What I'm saying is, even if you two make it, you'll be getting your hands dirty." As JP says his plan, Kaz tries to sit. His hips are still fractured and falls, screaming. Doesn't seem like there is much of a choice. I text back, "Trust me, if there was, I wouldn't your ass out of the fire." JP replies, "And that's where I am. A dying phone, a possibly dying friend. And my only hope is some sketchy promises from a man that claims to be Q but seems more QAnon. As always, if anyone has any ideas, let me know. So far listening to those around me hasn't exactly got me in the best situation. Looks like things went to hell, literally." So how do we know when this guy is causing the distraction? I text. JP laughs. It's genuine but dark all the same. The one thing I can promise you is that when this lunatic does his thing, you'll know. Is his answer. Everything is still happening so fast. The karmic quicksand that is our situation is dragging us down faster with every passing second. Kez is still looking rough. He's a living example of how being able to withstand violence isn't necessarily a good thing. What is this guy? Besides the obvious. I text. He's on a lot of radars, but to the best of anyone's knowledge, he's just some asshole. You'd think the headline would be that he has a scrap of the Ripper in his skull. But it isn't. No one can find anything on him before about 4 years ago. And even then, it's spotty. This might not sound like a big deal, but I've never seen someone that the collective efforts of the nosiest pricks on either side of the void can't figure out. Regardless, this guy can do 2 things you need: spill blood and cause shit. JP assures me. Do we need to worry about him? I question. Yes, of course. What part of anything I said was unclear? Unstable, unknown, unfriendly. Christ, how much brain did you get left with? I'm texting you a location. If you get out, I'll be there. Then we can see what we can do for Leo. JP says, dropping the call. I hide the phone, but realize it's been a while since I've seen one of the guards or twisted medical personnel walk by. The sounds of other entities, caged and tortured, ring through the grim hallway. Kaz, how are things coming along? I ask, fear and panic rising. It's going to be a while still, Kaz says, punctuating the sentence with a pained scream of his own. I'm going to spoil things just a bit. What happens next feels like the end of the world. And contrary to popular belief, the end of the world doesn't start with a whimper or a bang, but a song. 2 guards walk into the hallway, human or close enough. Doesn't make them any less intimidating, though. Heavily armed, and in tactical gear that'd be at home in a war zone, they patrol the cells. Subject 248 has escaped. Repeat, Subject 248 has escaped. Non-lethal force only has been authorized. We must retrieve the asset. A voice barks through a military-grade walkie-talkie system. The taller of the 2, a man with a caustic-looking facial scar, presses a button on a mounted speaker. Roger, he says, looking to his companion and nodding. They both draw stout, arcing batons from hip holsters. The sound of broken glass. A doorway at the end of the hall is plunged into darkness. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk to you again. A thin, sinister voice half sings. The guards exchange glances, standing firm, almost amused. Another light bulb bursts, barely audible footsteps. Because the vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping. The voice gains volume, taking on an eager, almost wavering tone. There's only one way down the hallway. This dickhead is just trying to shake us up. The shorter guard, a man with red hair and ghost white skin, says. 2 more light bulbs give way. There's 15 feet or so of visibility. The rest of the hallway is black as pitch. And the vision that was planted in my brain still remains. The voice is no longer singing. The ancient song's lyrics sound like a threat. The shorter guard stumbles to the side, hitting the bars of our cell. His companion is confused, and to be honest, so am I. But as the man starts to fall to his knees, I see it. A piece of jagged steel protrudes from the side of his skull. Blood falls in sheets as the man starts to gibber nonsense, clawing at the metal futilely. Within the sound of silence, the voice croons. The taller guard attempts to grab his speaker to radio for backup. There's a moment where you can tell this man, who willingly chose this evil job, realizes how much of a mistake it was. A look of shock as a rough, brutal length of metal, nothing more than a sharpened piece of debris, spins end over end, first severing his hand, then the cord of the walkie-talkie, and finally buries itself in his shoulder. The part of my brain that loves watching pain and brutality is being absolutely outshined by fear. Now, this may seem dramatic, even confusing, but you need to understand something. The difference between terror and horror. Terror is the fear of the unknown. Horror is the revulsion once it's revealed. Horror, I've been modified to love. Terror, sadly, I can very much feel. From the darkness walks a figure as confusing as the fact my creator didn't snip out the fear centers of my brain. It's the man from before, of course. He's wearing torn, blood-stained pants, shirtless, and carrying a military-style duffel bag. His hands and forearms are covered in so much blood and gore it looks like he's wearing gloves. The man's left hand holds something, but I can't tell what it is. The shirtless psycho's body is a detailed map of wounds that tell a story of torture, escape, and revenge. The man's body language is halfway between apex predator and drunken schizophrenic. His stroll to the two mortally wounded men is casual but eager, as if he's savoring every moment. In restless dreams, I've walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone. The pale figure comments in a wondering tone. In an instant, he slams the object in his hand into the taller guard's head. The quarter brick cracks the guard's skull, and he falls backward, legs flailing like a dying spider as he tries to keep his footing. The lunatic drops to all fours, searching for something on the ground. I get a good look at him, and see that he's flensed the tattoo jester's makeup from his face, accurately enough to keep the sharp, angled patterns. His lips are ripped and torn from the oversized ball gag, completing the clown from hell look. Neath the halo of a street lamp, I turned my collar to the cold and damp. The mysterious killer mumbles to himself, then his face brightens as he finds what he's looking for. A wicked grin causing blood to ooze from his torn lips. When my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light, he screams. Neither guard is in a state to defend themselves. The clown blinds them with a shard of shattered light bulb. He finishes his grim task, slowly turning toward Kaz and myself. His smile is full of shattered, almost fang-like teeth. His voice, though hoarse, seems normal. "You too, the puppet and the Candyman?" he asks. "Yes," Kaz says, trying and failing to rise. I nod. "I'm Mike," the tall stranger says, taking a keycard from one of the dying guards and opening the cell door. He throws the duffel on the cement floor and unzips it. "So, you look like 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag, Slenderman. How long is it going to be before you can walk?" Mike asks. "I don't know, maybe 5 minutes if I'm lucky, but I'll be in no state to fight." "Who are you?" Kaz replies. Mike laughs. "No fucking clue, my guy," he says, wrapping his bare skull with one hand. "There's a lot of loose nuts and bolts up here, and separating those from all the paranormal horseshit, that's a task I gave up on a while ago. What I do is kill people. Believe it or not, it gets kind of boring. I've always wanted to kill monsters." Mike lets the comment hang, bringing out a long purple jacket from the bag. "Jesus Christ, no," he says, tossing the garment aside. Kaz's eyes go wide. "That fabric is indestructible," he comments, wincing in pain as ribs begin to fuse. "You wear it then. I'm not walking around here looking like the goddamn Joker. Actually, let's trade," Mike says, taking Kaz's jacket and shirt. They hang absurdly off of the man. The supposedly indestructible garment sits on the ground, clearly too small for Kaz. "So here's my dilemma. Your friend says the shit in this bag has enough chutzpah to let me punch my M card. And all I have to do to keep it is cause enough of a distraction to let you two get out of here. Now, 5 minutes fighting whatever the hell Paize team is, that's going to be risky as hell," Mike says, pulling a walking stick topped with what I can feel is a lead-plated infant skull from the duffel. It radiates an energy that makes me walk backward. "But sending you two on your way, That'd put a notch in my belt and let me get out of here before the shit really hits the fan. He stalks toward Kaz. My friend tries to move backward, but succeeds in nothing more than making himself scream. Mike taps Kaz's shoulder with the head of the walking stick. The flesh peels back like wax under a welder's torch. So tall, warped, and handsome, I'm going to ask you a question, and keep in mind I know the answer. When you were talking to Pi, you said you were buddies with the goddamn cancer I've got stuck in my brain. Were you? Mike asks. Every sense I have tells me this person in front of me is just that, a person. But the look he gives Kaz is as terrifying as anything I've seen yet. We could be found in the same circles for a time. Kaz replies, ashamed. God damn it. Mike sighs, moving the walking stick. Guess you're walking out of here then. But someday, I'm going to want to know everything you know about Demi. Understood. Whatever you ask. Just, as Kaz talks, I see the strangest thing. For a moment, Mike's features and body language change. The voice that comes from him isn't that of an abused lunatic, but smooth, almost cultured. Kaz, you have to help me. The second voice says, panicked. Mike's face contorts. There's clearly some kind of internal struggle happening. Our demented savior grabs the cell bars and begins to slam his face into them. He stumbles backward, shaking his head. Nice try, Jack, but you weren't the first voice in my head, and you won't be the last. Now you lil fella, you going to be any use? Mike asks, regaining what passes for his wits. I swap out a hand for one of my blades. The killer snickers. Oh, that's just goddamned adorable. Like a little recalled Muppet or something. As Mike talks, he begins talking an assortment of various items from the duffel. Some, like a pistol and an onyx-handled knife, have obvious uses. Others, though, resonate with a powerful ethereal energy. I have no idea what they do, and I'm guessing neither does Mike. Noise from the door on the lit end of the hallway, resonant, rhythmic banging. I can hear hinges start to bend and screech. It's being breached. Must have had those goons on a heart monitor or something. Thought I'd have had a bit more time. What's the Ada tall man? Mike asks, wrapping a white silk scarf around one hand. Kaz rises to one knee shakily. Another minute or two. Kaz says shamefully. Sounds like 4 of them, nothing close to human. I can keep them busy for 3 minutes, maybe even put one of them down if your friend wasn't full of shit. But you two need to be making your way to the warehouse by then. Once things start going south, I'm out. Mike explains. I have no way to text a reply, so I nod. My thanks, Kaz says. Just remember your end of the deal when the time comes. For your sake. Mike states. The door tears off its hinges, heavy, trudging footsteps from the far end of the hall. The other trapped entities begin a torrent of screamed abuse and threats. Like someone flipped a switch, Mike's body language changes and he walks into the hallway, one hand running the skull-topped cane along the cell bars. I make my way to the open cell door, keeping an eye on the situation while Kaz begins to attempt standing. For entities, at the back stand 2 hulking things that look like someone stopped making a werewolf halfway through. Mottled, rash-covered skin, small patches of long, wiry hair sprouting at random, and faces twisted into a myopic toddler's drawing of a canine visage. Leading them is short, thin, feminine-looking creature. It's human-shaped with deep purple skin and white eyes. Her fingers split toward the ends. Long, thin, almost tentacle-like growths moving like undersea life. Behind her is something ethereal, a gray, smog-like thing that looms above. Mike starts to talk, but the leader holds up one strange finger, almost seductively. Her eyes start to form black, spinning spirals. She grins, revealing small, pointed teeth. Mike stops dead in his tracks, head lolling to one side slightly. Brains over brawn, boys. The Lovecraftian hypnotist says to her compatriots. I'm shocked at the clear, Northern English accent that comes from the dog-like creature closest to the door. "Don't underestimate him, Kim. You saw the mess he left." "Fair enough," Kim says, her grin widening, making her look even more like some kind of undersea abomination. "Clown, I'm hungry." Without hesitation, Mike takes the stiletto-bladed knife and cuts a thick piece of flesh from his arm and begins to walk forward. "Satisfied, Peter? Clown, bandage yourself before you bleed out and get us all killed," Kim demands smugly. Mike wraps his forearm in the white fabric from the duffel. Blood quickly soaks it, but the makeshift bandage does its best. "Kneel," Kim commands, holding out her hand. Mike complies, offering up his flesh, his face blank. The creature greedily consumes the gift. My heart sinks. Kaz manages to stumble and drag himself a few feet to see our last chance of hope enraptured by whatever the hell Kim is. Peter laughs. "Jorge, we're getting that promotion, man." The other dog-like thing smiles and agrees. As Kim licks the last of Mike's blood from her alien fingers, Mike speaks. "I'll take that back now," he says. The man moves fast enough that I don't see the blade tear the aquatic-looking entity open from waist to chin. Just the spray of greenish-purple fluid and odd-looking innards that hit the ground. Mike's on his feet, bandaged arm elbow deep in Kim's torso. Some kind of reaction is happening. Smoke begins to pour from her hollowed chest as Mike tosses her eviscerated body aside. Kim begins to break down, flesh turning into a curdled-looking soupy mess. In seconds, nothing remains but a sludgy pile and the last scraps of the fabric from Mike's arm, burning to ash. Anyone who wants to get into my head is gonna need to get in fucking line, Mike says to the shocked entities. There is a moment of stillness, of silence, before the hallway turns into a war zone. His surprise played out, it's obvious Mike is playing for time. He's landing painful, unexpected blows, but can't press his attack. He pulls trick after trick from JP's duffel. A strike from the cane shatters the jaw of one of the dog things. A splash of liquid from a silver flask causes the ethereal creature to back itself into a corner. But they press on. Kaz starts to take small, unsteady steps. His torso is still mangled. His skin is loose and unhealthy looking, but the look on his face is determined. Mike is losing ground, saved only by the fact that these killers have been muzzled by their leader. "We need to leave," Kaz says, coughing, as he starts to walk out of the cell. His first few steps are slow, but I think we can finally get the hell out of this place. Everything happening is so beyond us, and our abilities. I feel small, afraid. I need to be out of this place. I couldn't feel anything less like the weapon I was created to be. Kaz trips as he hits the ground. Something in the cell across from us reaches a long-fingered, black-clawed hand through the bars, grabbing Kaz by the neck. I panic, stabbing at the wrist of the thing. Kaz struggles, but fractured arms provide no grip against whatever fresh horror lies within the cell. Mike is violently slammed into the floor, then ceiling by the ghost-like entity. The impact leaves him bleeding and stumbling like a drunk. "Fuck this," Jorge says, one eye torn out at some point during the scrum. He dashes toward Mike, low and feral, and grabs the stunned man by the crotch with one hand and shoulder with the other. I saw through enough tendons that the thing in the cell releases Kaz. Coughing and sputtering, he begins to limp as fast as he can toward the warehouse. I can't take my eyes off the fight. For a moment, I look at it through the implanted eye, thinking maybe I can see something to help. I don't. In fact, what I don't see is what raises questions. In between all of the indescribable patterns of the supernatural, Mike is nothing. Not the dim streak normal folks are, but a void of nothing that stands out like a sore thumb. Peter and the ghost-like thing try and stop him, but Jorge begins to try and tear Mike in half, rage overtaking even his fear of his demonic master. There's a blinding flash of light in the dim hallway as Jorge ignites. A glass bottle shatters against the ground as the canine creature drops the clown. It's a brief victory. The thing is hurt and stunned, but already rolling on the ground, smothering the flames. Punch! Kaz screams from the warehouse door. We need to move! Mike's life can be measured in seconds. What's left of my conscience screams at me to help him. But as I look through the door, I realize salvation isn't as close as I thought. That Kaz and I have our own problems ahead. Before, the warehouse was terrifying in a mundane way, brutal in a kind of Ed Gein way. But the abattoir in front of us isn't just some psychopath's playground anymore. Clearly, Pi has lost his patience. The warehouse is an evil-infused hellscape. Biological-looking walls, animated hooks and chains, victims scrambling with garish wounds. It's like someone dredged up a corner of hell. And this is what we have to get through. Like always, I need your help. Kaz can't fight, I can't reach JP, and Mike has his own things to deal with, for as long as he can survive anyway. Please, hurry, and everyone give their ideas. Because of all the things I expected, literally going through hell isn't one of them. I hear Mike screaming in pain behind us, but I can't tear my eyes from the sight in front of me. Fear and horror, they tend to have a diminishing effect. There are only so many times you can toss spooky things at people or evil dolls and expect them to react. But my situation, it's the different types of fear that keep me on the brink of losing it. I'm going to assume the majority of you out there don't have the same kind of life I do, so I'll make an analogy to try and explain things a bit better. Picture this: you're out at your favorite bar having a good time, and at the end of the night you go to leave. Waiting for you is a nasty guy who outweighs you by 30 pounds. He's drunk and intent on doing you harm. Scary, no doubt, but it's a scary that you can understand. And depending on who you are, maybe even deal with. Now, same scenario, only this time when you leave, it isn't a biker who mistook you for the guy who scratched his ride, but a rabid tiger. Still fear-inducing, but in a much less familiar way, with few options as to how to handle it. Final scenario, when that door opens, it's a hurricane. Whether it's more dangerous than the tiger is a moot point, as there are infinitely fewer options as to how to come out of things whole. Waking up as some kind of Etsy Frankenstein's monster was my biker, the bishop was my tiger, and this place, it's a shitstorm so bad it's turned into a full-on hurricane. The scene in front of me, guards, human and entity struggle to wrangle more wounded torture victims than I can quickly count. I don't know if it's tactical or just the result of unfiltered rage, but the warehouse itself is becoming more corrupted by the second. It wasn't exactly Disneyland before, but scummy. Foul energy is permeating and turning everything within. It's bigger than it was, bigger than is possible, surfaces coated in black organic veins, tools and torture implements, rattling or crawling, given some kind of blunt, evil sentience. Kaz and I take our first few steps in, the floor slick with blood and some kind of spreading gray mold. I find myself wondering, why in the hell haven't I just been going invisible? As it hits me, not some epiphany or further mystery in my situation, something literally hits me. I'm dazed, vision blurry as I lay on the ground. I feel a weight on me, and as my sight clears, I see a sight, pathetic and dangerous at the same time. Whoever it is has been here a long time. His long, dark beard is broken by scars and wounds. His scarred, pitted flesh has months of grime and filth, infected wounds, and black rot. He has a thick metal rod, and slams it over and over again into my head. I scream as a blow causes something to give way, my new I suddenly feeling cold and dead. The pain worse than the surgery itself. Kaz tries to intervene, but a backhanded blow of the improvised truncheon shatters an already damaged arm. I want to explain something you guys might not know. What I give you here is pretty filtered. It's how I can communicate and think when I have time to sort through the confusing mess of crossed wires that is my brain. I respect you guys too much to make you sit through a lot of the darker urges and thoughts that are the majority of what's going through my mind. You guys are here for the paranormal, the unknown, the supernatural. Subjecting you to another sick bastard's twisted manifesto isn't something I want to do. But every second is a struggle, is what I'm saying. The dwindling bits of me that are still human, still rational, want to fight this forced urge to destroy, but every day one voice gets a little dimmer and one a little stronger. I know the man on top of me is a victim. All he saw was another random horror between him and freedom. But with every blow landed, it gets harder to keep my "not today, Satan" attitude. I must have some kind of good karma built up before I can watch myself eviscerate this poor bastard. He's tackled by someone in what's left of a security uniform. Kaz grabs me as I back up, lifting me to my feet with a grunt of pain. Where is the damned exit? He laments. I see what he means. The far walls of the place are out of sight, each extending in an eyeball-straining fashion beyond a false horizon. We go relatively unnoticed in the chaos, both sides fighting for survival. But among that horrific scrum, there are a few entities with their wits about them. Pi's best, working quickly to restore the twisted order of this place. Soon enough the warehouse will be under control, and we need to get the hell out before then. 'Cause Trips, it's my turn to lend a helping hand. Probably less people the closer to the exit we get. I volunteer. As good of a plan as any. This is a display of power I've never witnessed. It'd be impressive under other circumstances. Kaz replies. We walk for what feels like miles through endless rows of industrial shelving and grim implements. The further we go, the less sense the arrangement of objects makes. Soon enough we are having to climb over eclectic, random combinations of tools, shelves, and other assorted warehouse paraphernalia. The sounds of carnage are far in the background, but the small noises breaking the silence of our death march shake me just as bad. What could be the whispers of the damned, or hushed plans for our capture, echo loud enough to notice but not to understand. Haze, both literal and ethereal, thickens around us. I can feel others in the distance, but whether they are Pi's victims or thralls, I have no idea. Kaz, you're still leaking pretty bad. I say. Won't be getting much better until I can get back to my shop. Or barring that, a dark basement with an unlucky individual. Kaz answers with a cough. With every step I feel our chances getting slimmer. Something large and smart enough to stay out of sight has been following us. Whether it's on our trail or just cleaning up stragglers, I have no idea. After what feels like hours of walking, Kaz needs a break. I want to push him onward, but when I see the winding blood trail and the handful of open fractures on his body, I relent. No judgments if you need to, order some long pig, I say. Kaz laughs, coughs, then replies. Things aren't that simple for me, actually. I've been meaning to mention they aren't that simple for you either. Myself, I need time, privacy, and safety to feed. The majority of my digestion is external. And you aren't fueled by blood either. You feed on the other thing that the human body loses when violence is applied to it. What? I thought, it was some kind of feedback system. Are you saying, I eat souls? I stammer. More take a bite out of. And the concept of a soul is a little rudimentary, but you're in the ballpark. Kaz informs me. And you feel the need to tell me this, why? I ask accusingly. Because Punch, if this place is much larger, I'm not making it out. Kaz says matter-of-factly. Don't be dramatic. It's just flesh and bone. You'll shrug it off. I reassure. I'm not Pi. I'm not something from another part of reality. I'm dying. I can barely keep moving, let alone help you. This place is warping space and time. It could be days before we find the exit. When the time comes, I want you to keep going. Kaz admits. We sit in silence for a while, Kaz leaning against twisted metal shelving. This place makes me feel like a rat in a maze, small and completely at the whim of whoever created it. At first I think the red dot on Kaz is just another of his dozens of minor wounds reopening, but then I hear him. Don't move. I know I wouldn't die for my boss, so I'm going to assume you don't want to either. Name's Steve, says a square-jawed, dark-haired man holding a massive rifle of some form, clearly pilfered from one of the guards. The fear, panic, and hell-spawned fog has dimmed my senses. I should have been able to feel this guy and the 4 others behind him coming. Now that I see them, that dark magic keeping me going gives me insight. The 2 women are sisters, 30s, one a police officer and one a lawyer. The cop is the de facto leader of the group, but Steve wants to play hero more. The nervous-looking men standing at the back of the group were abducted from a Narcanon meeting a few months back. They're cowards, but have stepped up to the plate for their freedom. The specifics get a little blurry, but I see the bond, the kinship, and the trials this group has been through. I saw innocence once. Here I see so much more than that. Loyalty, sacrifice, and resilience. This is one of those moments where I am going to spare you 80% of my thoughts. They were bad. Easy, sir, Kaz states, shakily getting to his feet. I've been shackled by the same fiend you have, wounded by the same hand. I don't have time to explain the finer points of things, but we all stand a better chance of getting out by working together. As strange as my companion and I are, we mean you no harm. I'm almost surprised by his eloquence. Deb, take this, Steve says, passing off the rifle to the stone-faced officer. So, I'm to believe you 2 are the only creepy crawlies around here that aren't out for blood? The man walks forward, he's afraid, but doing a perfect job hiding it. You'll have to. We need to act as soon as possible. The longer Pi's corruption takes hold, the thinner space and time become. Judging by the look of your group, he's managed to drag hours into days in some places. Weeks, actually, Steve says, walking closer. I thought the shit I had to see in the warehouse was bad. That was the demon and his cronies just doing business. These things pissed off and untethered? You have no idea what I've seen your kind do. The brave people that died. The man is inches from Kaz now, staring up at the wounded entity, fearless. He pays me no mind, so I stay close. The road is brutal and hard. I understand that, but don't let it blind you. Kaz's tone is exasperated, impatient. Oh, I can see just fine, and the road is about to get a little less difficult. Steve says, I want to tell Steve to stop to help Kaz make his case. But the man is a quick draw and made up his mind long before he started talking. The stolen pistol is large and covered in symbols that have nothing to do with either Smith or Wesson. Every moment of this hellhole I have been fighting to keep myself from giving in to the dark urges that have been buried inside of me. And every time I've been able to understand how going off on a murder spree would do nothing more than get me killed. That pistol would put Kaz on the floor on a good day. Right now, it's going to finish what Pi's goons started. And that little bit of logic, that tiny excuse, that spark of justification starts a fire. I can't say I'm going to relate this next part unfiltered, but I'm going to be a bit more honest than I usually am. I want all of the people rooting for me for the wrong reasons to understand. I'm nothing to put on a t-shirt. The parts of me that love doing the worst things out there are just as much me as the parts that want to try and stop the bishop. I'm not a good guy doing bad things, I'm just me. Steve may be a quick draw, but I'm faster. His Achilles tendons retract into his calves as my blades sever them cleanly. In the movies and the stories, the hero can keep fighting till they're mincemeat. And even then, they wince more at the stitching than they do at the wound. But in real life, things are much more fun. The gun drops first, then a look of confusion as he begins to fall, hands grabbing at legs that no longer obey his commands. I'm under him now. The wall I was vainly trying to put up between who I am and what I am is gone. The scream starts as gravity takes hold. It's deep, loud, and pathetic. The The sound of a person experiencing more pain than they know is possible, and understanding there's only more to come. But it's cut short. Not by a death blow, mind you, efficiency is the last thing on my mind. With emotion like a captive bolt gun, I piston my hands up as Steve falls, shearing through the bottom of his spine. His legs stop hurting, they stop feeling anything, in fact. I end Steve quickly, but in a fashion that would make the creators of the Iron Maiden take notes. I stand in shattered ribs, staring at a face split in two. Then I feel it. An energy washing over me, no, that's wrong, being drawn into me. What I had before, the home invaders, that was like basement meth. What I take from Steve is China White. For on one should be a death sentence. My element of surprise is gone. But I understand things now. I feel things I couldn't before. The first is, I don't need to fight people. That's stupid, they're bigger, faster, and for the moment stronger. I just need to fight parts of people. Everyone thinks they're Ash Williams, able to shrug off lost limbs if they really need to. Everyone is fucking wrong. Over any kind of distance, I'm slow as hell, but the strange way I'm weighted, and the effects of whatever soul-cannibalizing magic keeps me going makes me agile as hell. The group fights on, but frailty of mind and body takes its toll. Blood pours, and I'm enraptured. It's the opposite of instinct. Every footstep is deliberate. Every twist of the blade done to cause pain, fear, and hopelessness. Of course I take damage, but it's all part of the dance. Those moments of hope as an improvised mace dents my skull, or a well-placed kick sends me skittering. They make the slow realization all the better. I lose myself to this sport of brutality. And for a moment I see. More than that, for a fleeting spot of time, I'm back. Faces are blurred, details seem to shift and flow, but I'm me, flesh and blood, me. It's some kind of family function, massive. There's no sinister overtones, moral compromises, or bloody battles. Just a large group of folks, the older generations having been born in Finland or Mexico. Peace. For a moment anyway. I stand in wrecked shelving and entrails. Fronds of the metal shell of my head are bent, not quite closing true. The addicts and the lawyer remain. I want to see my family again. I don't want this power and agency to go away. Greed, pure selfish greed. I see in ways no human can. In ways nobody wants to. I understand the utility of every shadow, every metal spur, every power tool around me. I shed blood and take souls, dying for one more second of who I was. One more breath of air from my own fucking lungs. One addict clutches at a face covered in epoxy. Internal ruptures and deep wounds try to kill him before suffocation does. The other tries to save their friend. I dispatch them in a way that would get this account locked for explaining. But that act, that nearly blasphemous violation of the human body, it takes me there. A lake, a sunset, a small, pale-skinned old woman. I can't think of her name or my own for that matter, but I think it's my grandmother. She's telling me something important, but I can't make out the words. A spurt of blood, and a scream of pain takes me from my reward. But it's not the lawyer's blood, nor her scream. I'm not staring at her torn corpse. I'm looking down at 4 inches of a 9-inch knife sticking out of my chest. The fact I've posted this should let you know I didn't die. I understand something as I feel my insides begin to wrap around the blade. It becomes crystal clear as that dark force within me makes the embedded weapon part of me. My creator knew exactly what she was doing. It's a shock death, and one that all you gore hounds out there would love. But I think this is about as unfiltered as I can be right now. Before the blood has cooled, I can feel the energy fleeing my body. The more I take, the quicker it leaves, and the ethereal whirlpool pie is causing isn't helping. Like every evil substance, the worst part of what powers me is the come down. I see what I've done. Clarity comes in a soul-crushing wave. I feel my mind start to flicker and war with itself. Kaz of all people looks shocked. Justification, it's not even cold comfort. This isn't a war. This is a bunch of people stuck in a natural disaster. We walk in silence. Maybe Kaz is judging me. Maybe he's just too hurt to keep up conversation. Regardless, it gives me way too much time to think. The power is gone, but I feel something. A little bit of what made those people themselves. If I could shudder and vomit, I would. The impossible miles start to become barren. It feels like walking through an endless concrete void. We get out. It's not a hero's exit. It's the miserable slink of a pack of wounded coyote. So folks, who hates me? I know I do. If this is all I am, if this is how I have to exist, does anything else I do even matter? I'm scared. And I don't mean that in some esoteric, I don't know what I'm capable of way. This isn't some kind of humble brag about how strong I am. I know what I'm capable of now, and it terrifies me. To think that I'm locked in this goddamn shell, this murderous coffin, it's hell. I can't think of anything Pi, nor his many relatives could put me through worse than this. I'm writing this from JP's place. I describe things here, but honestly, I need to be in a more jovial mood. I'm not going to do it justice with the combination of fear and self-hatred I have going right now. So please, everyone, give me any advice you have in the comments. I'm listening to each and every one of them. Whether it's how to make peace with what I am, how the three, but I won't spoil anything. Of us can get Leo out or anything else you can think of. Till next time. Punch. Looks like I'm still kicking. You'd think the worst was behind us, but the slow, paranoid trudge to JP's place was its own little slice of hell, though in a much less literal way. Poor Kaz is rough. Every step seems like a battle. And it's not helped by the fact that we have to take looping, wandering paths to avoid me being seen. Didn't realize how much I'd gotten used to the new eye. But eventually we make it there, Kaz shirtless, and myself doing my best to keep out of sight. I knock, and out of all the strange things I've seen tonight, the beautiful, dark-skinned woman who answers the door throws me for the biggest loop. If I hadn't just trauma-killed my way through hell, I'd have probably noticed the fact she didn't seem to bat an eyelash at the two of us standing there. No way this is his place. I say, considering the paint-peeling stuff JP was saying about just about every group of humans on the planet. Oh, it is. She says with a smile before turning. Babe, your friends are here. I expected JP's place to be some kind of tinfoil hat-themed rat's nest. Full of corkboard, red string, firearms, and offensive posters. But I'm looking at a nice middle-class home. Lots of computers, a few antiques, but nothing to indicate JP's career. Kaz and Punch, right? I'm Sveta. Justin told me you guys would be in rough shape, but wow. Come in. The confusingly located woman says. We do. Kaz and I exchanging stunned looks. JP comes downstairs holding a jar full of a black, terry, almost cotton candy-like substance. This time, though, he looks like he could be an accountant or pharmacist. Dress pants and a clean button-up shirt. I have so many questions, I blurt, taking a seat on a leather ottoman. JP grins, handing the jar to Kaz. What, you were expecting something different? Kaz takes the jar and begins eating the substance within. I have no idea how to answer that politely. I say honestly. JP laughs, Sveta joining him. The shit that goes bump in the night has all kinds of ways of finding people. They can look for things you didn't even know could be seen. Positive actions, words, thoughts, they smell those like a hound smells sweat. Here, I'm protected from things like that, but when I go out, I take no chances. I surround myself with a fug of the worst ideas made by man. JP explains. It gives me a sense of scale of just how big all of this can be. When you're stuck in the thick of it, you don't really get that kind of perspective. Kaz finishes the jar, leaning backward into an overstuffed couch. How long till you're patched up? JP asks. A few days, at least. I've never been this badly hurt. Might be as long as a week. Are we too late to help Leo? Kez replies. Son of a bitch. JP begins. Well, I have good news and bad news on the Leo front. The good news is that he's still alive. The Dutch uncle is really making a meal out of things. Tearing him apart, putting him back together. I don't think he's stopping anytime soon. Then let's put an end to that. Kez says he tries to sound determined, but he's tired, hurt, and it shows. No, when something like the bishop starts going full supervillain, you let them. He gives us time. JP replies. If that's the good news, what's the bad news? Ask. This bishop of yours, his reach exceeds his grasp. Sveta starts. He's part of an organization worldwide, ranks themselves based on local religion. Heresy in parody. They have a plan for this place, this city. They've began to move their people in. That house was just the beginning, its current owner, pretty much middle management. Jesus Christ is all I can muster. Great example of who we need. JP says fatalistically, that or a fucking army. What can we do? Kez says with a grunt as something deep within him makes a wet popping noise. Lower our expectations. How many spooky bastards can you round up? JP inquires. None. By now Pi will have made it known that I am persona non grata. Few around would openly attack, but I won't be getting any help. Kez laments. You're shitting me, right? Okay, so there goes plan B. Plan C it is. If we don't have anyone to run some severe interference, you three need to disappear. Kez, I've got a contact in Holland, little city your kind get along pretty well in. Punch, Ecuador, nice old toy maker. He'll keep you on the straight and narrow. Leo gets the deepest pit of the most barren part of Canada. If it's just Leo and the proxy, we're looking at about 8% 25 success rate. JP explains grimly. Kez, there isn't anyone? I plead. Maybe Hive and Flap. They hold no love for their kind. But reaching out is going to be risky in and of itself. And knowing those two, they're going to want to be paid handsomely. Kez offers. That's another thing. What I had to smuggle to Mr. E back in the warehouse. None of it was cheap and none of it was easy to find. I'm running low on anything of real value and it's going to take a while to replenish my stocks. I'll help you guys all I can. But I'm running on fumes here. JP laments. Appreciated. 2 questions though. First, how can I get healed or repaired or whatever? I'm looking like a factory reject and feeling like shit. Second, if you could understand me, why did you let me keep texting back at the house? Ask. You're talking to a guy whose family business is working with supernatural objects and whose wife has forgotten more than he'll ever know on the subject. I'll get those dents banged out. And I let you keep texting because it was kind of adorable. JP replies with a grin. I can guarantee that at some point you've heard pain be referred to as indescribable, when what the person really means is that it isn't relatable. But the pain I felt as JP began his combination of surgery, small appliance repair and ritual was the very definition of the word indescribable. Where would I begin explaining what it feels like to have your metal heated and bent? Or the sensation of flesh that isn't truly living going under the knife? I can't describe the pain, but I can describe the fear. Every second made me feel more like I was trapped in something. Every glimpse of my twisted flesh in a mirror shocks me, makes me want to rip apart this walking coffin I've been placed in and bleed out on the stainless steel table. I have to do something to distract myself. What's the diagnosis? I ask JP as he uses a pair of stout pliers to straighten out a bent spar of metal. He looks around for a moment, then stands, closing the door to his workshop. You know how everyone thinks your maker was a C student? I'm not seeing that. And the more I look at how things are playing out, the less I'm willing to accept coincidence as an explanation. He answers, "What are you saying?" I prod, as fittingly JP prods some mechanical bit in my left arm with a modified voltmeter. I don't know 100%, but I have some theories. No one can tell the future. If they could, you'd be able to hunt the supernatural by looking for lottery winners. But a decent amount of people in our world have foresight. It's rare but not unheard of. Maybe your maker saw some of this coming, set you in place to drop a turd in the bishop's punch bowl. JP postulates as he begins to saw the handle from the knife jammed through me. What about the family? I felt that mission nagging at me every second of every day. Why don't I know anything about the bishop or Leo or you? I inquire. Can't say for sure, but my guess would be information you don't know can't be information you give. Things at this scale move subtly, little nudges to fate moving things toward one direction. You still being you inside there isn't a bug, it's a feature. Whatever is playing out, it needs conscience, it needs some kind of morality. JP sounds somber as he reconnects my new eye. Oh yeah, I'm a perfect role model. I told you what I did back there. I nearly whisper this shame and fear at what I'm capable of hit me as hard as the pain from the surgery. Punch, you can't be observed again, and you're in a quiet neighborhood in a home that's warded against just about everything. Take out about a dozen people, you'll be a force of nature for a half hour. Even odds at walking out of the bishop's place. Go nuts. Now that this eye is back in, I can't stop you. JP lets the statement disguised as an offer hang. I don't reply. That's what I mean. You'd be more efficient with your wits and the morality of a virus. You'd be more deadly as a 6-foot hulk of iron and chainsaws. But instead, you're a conflicted lil fella with just enough punch to keep going. That means something. I can't tell if you're trying to reassure me or warn me. I say, both. I have a lot of clients. The Gray Smiths keep the fight against the void well armed. But Leo is a close friend of mine. He's saved my wife, my life, and been like a brother to me. But I have to tell you something about the proxy. Now that I'm digging around in here, things make more sense. Don't think of it like a free life. I know it's tempting to see what you are as some kind of superpower, but it isn't. You're controlling it with the parts of your mind and being that are still human. If it gets destroyed while you're using it, what's left will be something I have to put down. You need to know the risks involved here. JP replies, still trying to sync up the JP I met in the house with the guy who is acting as my therapist/repairman here. I add, trying to lighten the mood. Yeah, trust me, wading through hours of the worst opinions on earth isn't fun. Gives me a bit of faith in humanity when I get sucker punched for some of those shirts I wear though. Cost of doing business, I guess. Glad to pay it. JP says, your wife, what's her deal? I reply, scrambling for a topic to keep my mind off the pain and confusing flashes of a past life. You and I, we're not family yet, lil fella. But let me give you a history lesson. You've been out of the loop for a few decades. Things like vampires, witches, true demons, Krampus, goblins, we call them brand names. And all of them are extinct or nearly there. Years of infighting, hunting, and power struggles that could destroy the world have left them beyond decimated. The new breeds, your Slenderman likes, cursed media, corporate-themed slashers, rule-summoned entities, they are more numerous but less related. They're chaotic, created from a system that's breaking down. JP says with a tone of reflection. And what does this have to do with my question? I reply. JP simply shrugs and continues the final touches on bringing me back to as close to factory default as possible. The next few days go by at a snail's pace. JP has patched into the security systems and we watch as Leo is shown and introduced to otherworldly torture so brutal and esoteric, it's best to leave things a little vague. The bishop gives things the personal touch less and less as time goes on, content to see the results of the ritual-spawned creatures and cultists dressed in their Sunday best. After some false starts and nerve-wracking deals, Kaz manages to get in touch with Hive and Flap. Reluctantly, JP parts with most of his remaining stock in exchange of a promise of them covering our exit. If this place is so well warded, why aren't we home free when we get back? I ask JP as the four of us go over the newest variant of the plan. There's a difference between being scryed on and having someone follow you home. Making two monsters walking up to my door look like a tall uncle and a wobbly toddler. I can do. Rewrite a cultist's brain to forget they followed a prisoner here. That's a little beyond me. JP answers sarcastically. When do we get Leo out? Kaz asks. He's been getting better, but what they put him through still clearly shows. That's on him. Once he makes a play for the stash in the bathroom, Punch can use the proxy and we all hope for the best. The only thing I'm worried about is his mind. Hunters, they're human, but they come from a very crooked branch of the family tree. They don't get twisted and warped by contact with the unknown like most people, but that battle of will makes them a different breed. You've noticed it, the camp, the extreme confidence, that pulp character vibe. It's all part of who they are. I've seen this kind of helplessness break them. The rest of us were used to getting the shaft, having no options. Not them though. The admission makes the room go silent. None of us has anything to add as we think of our friend being broken to that extent. I may be an evil doll, but if the story ended with watching one of the only people I can trust go insane and die, I wouldn't be posting it. I'm not an asshole. Leo picks his moment perfectly. The bishop is gone, and the majority of the twisted, hell-spawned creatures are focused on other infernal tasks. Around him are a half-dozen cultists, none quite dressed the same, but all in what I've come to think of as the uniform of this cult. Cheap suits, dress pants, and somewhere on each outfit a stark purple accent of some form. Leo is bad off, missing fingers, one foot twisted at a brutal angle, and wounds of every imaginable type covering him. Half dead from trauma and infection, he has no problem selling his ruse. When he vomits on himself, the group laughs and mocks him, but no one wants to be stuck in a damp, windowless basement with a man that just shit what's left of his pants. If these were trained people, they would have simply let him stew. But the bishop's human followers are the twisted and the weak-minded. Locals lured with dark promises and dark magic. They drag Leo from the sprawling, now dungeon-like basement, his broken foot making him scream and nearly pass out. He's roughly thrown into the bathroom, leaving a smear of blood, waste and filth on the tile. A large, athletic-built man in a tweed suit coat and green pants spits on him. Clean yourself up for fuck's sake, the cultist says, slamming the door. We watch through the grainy camera as Leo limps to the toilet, almost falling as he stands on the seat to reach the wall-mounted tank. The large Ziploc bag inside has a gun and some ammunition from the home invaders, but more importantly, a gift from Kaz. The small, wrapped candy looks ancient, golden wrapper long since faded to an off-brown. But what's inside is more than a piece of spun sugar from a brand that hasn't existed since the 60s. It's the result of Kaz doing what his kind does. Filled with something a hell of a lot more useful than a caramel center. Leo grimaces as he eats it. Not that I can blame him. Half-century expired toilet candy, magic or not, can't taste good. The worst of the hero's wounds seal. Fingers sprout painfully. His foot twists back into place with a snap he's smart enough to muffle with a towel. And in a few seconds, while he's not looking fresh, he's clearly got some fight in him. It's go time, JP says. I let myself float. I feel the scraps of my mind and soul begin to get pulled somewhere far away. There is a terrifying moment of nothing, blankness. A feeling of being stuck in a place that's claustrophobic and immense all at the same time. Then I'm there, proxy whirring and clicking to life. It's 3.5 feet of bone, steel and pulsating in human flesh. For a second I savor it, to be free of that constant predator's mindset. That nagging urge to do the worst things possible. but the cold, vacant feeling that replaces it makes me wonder what consequences playing musical chairs with my soul is going to have. Information is tossed at me through the proxy's eyes. It's all too much to parse at first. What I've come to think of as my body is fluid, almost elegant. What I find myself encased in now is a blunt tool. The readouts tell me the house has somehow gotten slightly bigger. There are about 15 humans inside, and an unknown number of malignant and other entities. I'm standing in the attic, above the bathroom door, waiting for some kind of signal to get this couple 100 pounds of mechanical horror moving. Scared doesn't begin to describe things. I thought I'd feel invincible in this thing. But with what JP told me, it feels like holding massive pistol in a shaking hand. I can hear Leo mumbling something, a soft, almost song-like prayer in a language the proxy can't identify. I hear a clip being slammed home, and a door explode. I figure it's time to roll the dice. I break through the cheap drywall ceiling quick enough to see the man from before screaming in pain and rage. Bits of door kicked with a force beyond what someone should be able to muster sticking from his body. He shifts his focus from Leo to myself, his horrified look as he sees the skunk-themed monstrosity that is the proxy is all the opening the hero needs. The overhand punch breaks the cultist's jaw and knocks him out instantly. I'm already moving, wicked claws ready to finish the job. Leo blocks my way with a bare, grime-covered foot. Most of these people had no choice. They're being threatened and corrupted. Once the bishop is out of the picture, they can pick up the pieces. Nothing permanent to anything human. Got it? The wounded hero demands. I go to reply and realize I don't know how. A second or so later, though, a digitized version of Leo's voice comes from my chest. Nothing permanent. Got it. Something inside me changes the tone of the words to be a reply. Fucking hate that. Leo comments, grabbing a 2-foot piece of wood from the door. I wonder what good the flimsy, jagged debris is going to be, but the proxy shows me a strange energy starting to infuse it. The hallway has 2 more rooms than before, and the entire place has a damp, grimy feel to it. Like some kind of sad attempt at the kind of reality warping Pi was capable of. Below us we hear the sounds of footsteps, cultists being drawn to the commotion. The front door is out of the question, but you know what they say, when God closes a door he opens a window. Leo's kick, barefooted or not, sounds like a gunshot when it hits the door. But despite their cheap look and Leo's renewed vigor, it doesn't so much as rattle. Son of a bitch. This is going to take a minute, Leo says as he starts to tap and prod at the door. Got it, I reply in his voice. At least if I die, I won't have to hear that again, Leo says, starting to chant lowly. I'm wide enough to block the top of the stairs. As the handful of cultists reach them, 3 pistols ring out, firing a dozen or so shots in a couple of seconds. Plates chip, the proxy's vision stutters, and 1 claw is blown from my hand. But the resulting backspray of hot lead in the small hallway sends the first 4 cultists falling down the stairs holding painful fragmentation wounds. No guns unless you can hit the hunter, you fucking idiots. We don't need bullets chasing us around in here, a small man with a cutting voice says. His suit is more expensive, and he has a small, subtle silver circle lapel pin. A leader of some form, I'm guessing. The proxy confirms my suspicion as it shows him as 93% human, 7% unknown. A crackle of static and a yelp of pain from behind me. Whatever Leo is doing, it doesn't seem to be going well. The proxy calculates the most efficient ways to kill, no compulsion, just temptation. But if this was just a story about an evil doll who kills well, it wouldn't be that interesting, would it? You've heard that before. I have to follow through with my promise and show I'm not the fucking problem. The proxy is slow, but the torque sends cultists flying down the stairs. Ribs cracked, sensitive parts aching, teeth spread on the carpet, but each one will see the sunrise. This thing isn't designed to dole out mercy, and things take their toll. Its sluggish, robotic motions can't dodge the clubs, cleavers, and knives of the cultists. Wounded zealots rise again, throwing their damaged selves against me. The weight of the swarm, and the constraints of trying to keep my humanity making me back up into the hallway. Weak points and damaged systems start to pop up in my vision. 60 seconds. Maybe 90. Leo yells. A burst of green light illuminates the hallway. Whatever programming is running the proxy isn't designed for what I'm asking, but I feel it trying to accommodate, to adapt. I jab and I roar, trying to slow the mob. None of them want to get close to the proxy, but they're starting to realize I'm holding back. Then, from calculations goosed along with dark energy, a solution presents itself. I need more force. If you want to subdue someone, you don't send someone well armed, you send in someone big. One of the 3 tubes from the backpack releases a quarter of its thick red liquid into the proxy. I thrash and jerk, hitting the ground in an almost seizure-like state. The spectacle itself gives the cultists pause. They stand unsure and wary as I grow, taller and wider in painful bursts and fits. By the end, I'm an asymmetrical, misshapen construct nearly 5 feet tall. I taunt the group with their own screams played back. These people may be lost and being influenced by powers beyond their understanding, but fear and self-preservation take the edge off of their lunatic zeal. Ribs break and cultists find themselves stuck through walls, as my vision shows me a dozen points of concern on the proxy. Joints are beginning to wear. Damage is taking its toll. But in a few dozen seconds, I'm standing at the top of the stairs, all of the cultists either unable or unwilling to keep trying. The man with the silver pin looks exasperated, shaking his head as he pulls out a cell phone. Yeah, he's got something with him. Kind of a half-assed construct. Send up the negotiator, he says, grinning a wicked smile at us, as if he didn't just watch me disable a dozen people. I hear a small arching noise and a click. We're good, Leo begins. 5 massive, clawed fingers, large enough to fill the doorway from the kitchen, put deep furrows into the damp drywall. The sounds of something being dragged, an entity large enough the proxy's readouts can't seem to decide if it's sentient or an architectural accident, slowly makes its way up the stairs. Leonard, if you get out of that window as fast as you can, there's a very good chance you'll escape. A voice, choked and gleeful, says from the basement doorway. But behind that door are 5 lucky people we've been saving for a rainy day. We both know you won't leave them. You'll waste your window of freedom, and you'll be back with me. More dragging noises. The house itself seems to creak under the weight of the entity speaking. Another hand grasps the opposite side of the doorway. The voice sounds closer now. You've offended me, Leonard. You've made me and mine look foolish to the bishop. I want you to imagine what I'm capable of now that you've made this personal. Truly understand that what I've done to you, what I've shown you until now, has just been business. If you make me leave the comfort of this basement, the rules change, Leonard. I expect a quip and some crazy power, but when I look to Leo, I see terror, hesitation. Whatever went on here beyond what we saw, it's left its mark on him. Behind those massive, wicked claws are wrists the size of young oak. Whatever is dragging itself up, I want no part of. I turn and run toward Leo. I tackle him into the room, and as promised, a group of 3 men and 2 women are crudely chained to the floor. The impact seems to have snapped him back to reality a bit, but I see a very unheroic look of panic on his face. He sprints to the door, and with a mumbled syllable he had to repeat a half-dozen times the words he bypassed. Engage again. That won't hold him for long, Leo says, desperately trying to control his breathing. The group scream and plead for help. I walk to the window and look for any sign of flap. Nothing but 3 well-armed cultists waiting for our escape. Our backup isn't here. The suit says, having to heavily garble some words. Leo shudders, his face terror and frustration. Fuck me. Leo says softly. Are you going to be okay? I ask, wishing I had more control over the tone when I speak. I'm going to have to be. But that thing down there, we can't win a straight-up fight. And we need to get these people out. You've got the ear of tens of thousands of people. Maybe one of them has been paying enough attention to help us figure things out. Leo says, as the dragging noise begins to get closer. And that's where I am, desperately trying to give you guys an update before that door comes crashing down and I get to see what is scary enough it has Leo wanting to run in the other direction. You've helped me out before. JP boosted a couple of books when he was here the first time, and Hive seems to think he can work something with the insects in the home. I know it's a lot to ask, but I want these people to get out. I want to prove I'm not the problem. Leo works diligently at the locks holding the 5 prisoners. Thankfully, no wards or runes are inscribed on them. That being said, the bit of wire he stripped with his teeth makes a poor lockpick. The entity dragging itself down the hall takes its time, taunting Leo. Timbers creak as the massive thing spews threats and vitriol. Leo is starting to scare me. It isn't just the look on his face as the thing beyond the door gets closer. It's everything about him. If I had a pulse to race, it would be. Being okay with dying for a cause is one thing, but staring down a violent death miles away from making any kind of difference, that's scary as hell. More so if I'm the only person with their wits about them. One lock pops open. The chained victim has no idea what to make of the situation, simply dashing toward the window. Don't, Leo says. I'm given the tiniest sliver of hope by his commanding tone. There are at least 3 armed lunatics down there with itchy trigger fingers. You'll be dead before you hit the ground. What's the matter, Leonard? Things not going according to plan? You started this little ruse off by shitting your pants. Now it looks like you're shitting the bed. The entity taunts with an obnoxiously long, phlegmatic laugh. Leo has to close his eyes. He takes a deep breath, putting enough effort into keeping his cool veins start to rise on his neck. His voice doesn't waver, his shaking stops. If it wasn't for the fact his heart rate and pulse were displayed in my vision, I'd assume he actually pulled himself together. He's not okay, but he's doing a damn fine impression. The second lock pops open quicker than the first, releasing a middle-aged woman with large, green eyes that seem out of place in this ugly situation. A sin eater is a person or thing that through a ritual takes away bad shit you've done. Leo begins, opening the third lock nearly instantly. Don't ask me why it has to eat them, but it is what it is. That thing out there, it's the opposite of that. It spews out your hidden shit, flesh and blood consequences of every mistake you've made. The fourth lock opens. The small crowd listens raptly to Leo, who looks to them, picking the last lock without looking. I understand something then. I know it's cheating when I can see what's going on via arcane technology, but it still requires interpretation. People like Leo, they aren't just stronger, faster, or more capable of wielding the occult. It isn't just the physical battle or even the mystical one. Both Leo's kind and the malignant wield influence. They have a nuanced way of controlling emotion and faith. And this isn't taking into account it's a massive bastard, like a minibus with a torture kink. I'm not gonna sugarcoat things. If it gets in, we're fucked. We have backup, but at this point I don't know if they're coming. I can't promise you a happy ending, but once it works up the balls to stick its face in, me and Teddy Ruxpin here will buy you every second we can. As Leo talks, the air is charged. It's a small, pale thing compared to the overwhelming dark energy of the bishop's house, but it's something. I don't even have to mock that sad little war cry. I wager if I offer a softer fate, I get at least one of your little band to come out of their own free will. I know what you're doing, Leonard, it won't work. The vomitorium, okay. I think I might be getting good at naming things now. says, inching closer. Leo looks out the window when he mumbles, fuck. I assume Flap is still MIA. The tension is thick, the victims keep looking at me. I can tell they think I'm just another random horror here to kill them. I can feel how that's making them distrust Leo. Leonard, if you don't come out here, I'm gonna show you something new. The vomitorium says, almost crooning. The door suddenly tears itself free from the hinges. The victims scream. Leo is startled, but stands firm. It's not the door holding him back, it's the ward. He's just trying to get in your heads. We know it's gonna get bad, you dick-shaped asshole. Let's get on with things. Leo taunts. None of the sensors I've been equipped with can quite measure it, but whatever battle of will is going on between the entity and the hero starts to intensify. They're both part of it. This is just some kind of way to fuck with us. Look at that thing, you idiots are playing right into their hands. A ginger man with one eye swollen nearly shut says. I can almost visibly see the impact the statement has on Leo. His mojo begins to wane. Leo stumbles on how to reply. The other 4 victims become unsure. I stomp over to the man, letting all of the lethal blades and spines on my body whir and rattle. I've deflated, for lack of a better term, back to the height of a toddler, but I have the man's attention. JP be damned. If I ever meet my creator, I'm calling out the fact the sole form of communication she gave this proxy is creepy repetition. What I say next would have sounded a lot more convincing without all of the Max Headroom meets deepfake crap. I was made to kill children. I've done some awful things so far, but haven't crossed that particular bridge yet. If I don't, it will be because of Leo. If you 5 get out of here, it will be because of him. I get it, you were thrown face first into horror. Never given time to understand or adapt, and now you need to try and figure things out. But the really scary shit you can't predict. Coming up with a random conspiracy about the only person between you and whatever is in the hallway. That's just being human. But it's also going to get all of us killed. As I talk, I see a lot of confusion but no disbelief. The vomitorium laughs. Good save, thought things were going to get interesting there for a minute. Guess I'll have to make my own fun. The creature says before making a horrendous gagging noise. I can see the terror hidden behind Leo's hardened demeanor. He checks the window and curses again. With an amniotic-like burst of disgusting, flotsam-ridden fluid, 2 human forms slide across the floor. At first I think they're corpses, judging by the fact everyone with a nose in the room is gagging, the smell is about right. But slowly the 2 begin to rise. At first indistinct, filth-ridden human-shaped things, but quickly they turn into a woman in her 50s and a boy of about 12, both sharing a strong family resemblance with Leo. Your brother left, Lenny, off with that uncle of ours, and you went chasing after the priest. We were strong as a family. That's how heroes work. Your brother hurt the family, but you killed it. Her voice hits Leo like a sledgehammer. From the outside, what she's saying seems trite, especially coming from something Leo knows damn well is some kind of projection or mimic. But there are forces at play no sensor can gauge. To Leo, despite all evidence to the contrary, the woman standing in front of him is his mother. The crowd's flickering flame of hope begins to falter. The shell-shocked look and fresh tears on Leo's face not exactly inspiring confidence. Horror doesn't have to be blood and guts. I know it's a tired old cliché, but I'll be honest. Seeing Leo broken to this point is as terrifying as anything I've seen. If it's a cliché, so be it. Our death isn't peaceful, Lenny. You've made so many enemies, we just want rest. Leo's mother wails, her tone dripping accusation. My mind races, sensors throw indecipherable data at me as I try and do something to try and stop this. It's that, Leo stutters. Whatever mojo the hero had is nearly spent. The situation becomes grim. Leo himself is near his breaking point. My vision stutters, erratic random noises come from the speaker within the proxy. For a brief second, I feel whatever powers this abomination I'm trapped in shut down. When my sight returns, I see text flashing across it. Guess I was wrong about no sensor being able to detect things. Anomaly detected. I can't help but think no shit as the red text starts to flash, then fade, then change. Anomalous energy analyzed. The understanding hits me like a wave, almost too much to absorb on a conscious level. But two things are clear. 1. We are not killing the vomitorium. 2. I can help Leo. I see the battle of will as clear as day. In a black void of hatred and evil, small silver strands are being torn apart like spider webs in a hurricane. I walk forward, putting myself between Leo and the vomitorium's creations. I put my faith in the woman who made me, and whatever combination of programming and rituals is guiding me toward this insane plan. You've been going at that ward for about 10 minutes now. Jesus Christ, it took the catatonic guy too. I get that you're coming in, but fuck me getting killed by someone this bad at their job. That's just undignified. As I spout this taunt, I'm glad for the speaker. The tone is harsh and confident. A brutal combination of the speech the proxy has recorded. The mimics stop their mental torture. The room goes silent. I feel like every set of eyes in the world is on me. Those silver threads then hold still for a moment in the gale of evil. Can you do anything else? Honestly curious. See, I'm basically a Swiss Army knife, and from what I've been told, I'm a hunk of shit made by an idiot. So, don't tell me with how hard you're trying to seem like some kind of Lovecraft god. All you have is bulk and guilt. There's silence for a moment, then a laugh. It's small, quick, and comes from a man so badly beaten he's going to need reconstructive surgery. The threads stop dissolving. I could show you sights that would rust your steel as well as your mind, little toy. The vomitorium says, dragging itself close enough to the doorway I can see claws and the barest suggestions of a form. With every new piece of data our situation seems worse, that thing seems more powerful. But I don't stop, and as I talk, I notice something. A buried piece of programming starts to release the smallest amount of vapor from one of the tubes. A tiny, scentless puff of vapor wafts through the room. In quantity, it'd likely put someone out, maybe even a room full of people. But the nearly homeopathic amount the proxy dispenses makes the victims calm and suggestible. Don't threaten me with a good time. Have fun explaining to me whoever the hell it is you puke up though. Fractured memories are where I live. As I try and buy us some time, I see a tiny bit of focus return to Leo. He looks to me and smirks. Mixed with his fear and pain is a look of curiosity. Start trying bed sheets, curtains, cords, anything. Worst comes to worst, take your chances down there. If backup comes, it'll be easier to get out without broken ankles. The hero whispers. When Leo talks next, I see those strands start to grow slightly. From here on out, I'm not going to keep giving the play-by-play on the new sensor, just the highlights. I think you guys get the gist. You know what this guy really is, Punch? He's not a demon, hell, he's not even a malignant. We are looking at a legitimate closet monster. Most entities are known for their cunning or their power. These fucking things, though, let me tell you. If you wrote Shortman Syndrome into something's DNA, that'd be a closet monster. It's why so many of them get killed before they are any bigger than a loaf of bread. Last time I checked the numbers, 1 in 10 kids has actually killed one. They can be anywhere, but honestly, who cares? It's why when, by some goddamned miracle, one actually makes it long enough to be a threat, they get so mean. I almost get it. Big fella, how many cousins of yours died before you failed upwards? The rage from the closet monster, thanks for ruining my branding, Leo, is a tangible thing. Paint peels, wood splinters, and it throws itself face first into the ward. Gray flesh and dead, doll-like eyes, a mouth big enough to swallow a grown man in the rough shape of a doorway. The creature drools foul liquid from its square-toothed maw. The victims scream, their resolve almost broken by the sight of things to come. That hit a nerve, didn't it? You were talking about how you could get one of these people to walk out on their own. Or, as I like to call it, the played-out villain special. Let's flip that around. I say one of these fine folks would sacrifice themselves for the good of the rest of us. See, I burn souls like nitrous night slug, and maybe that's all we need to get out of here. I lie. That part of me full of evil intent is still on the other end of the city. I have no urge to hurt any of these people, and if I did, I'd get nothing out of it than more horrifying memories. I bank on the closet monster not knowing this, and the gamble works. His focus is on Leo and myself. He doesn't notice the victims tossing a homemade rope anchored to a dresser out of the window. The creature mutters curses in a dozen different languages as it redoubles its efforts on the ward. The energy of the barrier begins to flicker and fade. The closet monster grins. Leo looks to the window, his face brightens. Go, go, go! He screams to the victims. No way. Look at that thing out there. The green-eyed woman says. The ward is seconds away from failing, but I take a moment to look out of the window. The thing in question is Flap, each hand buried deep in a severed head of a cult member. He waves the grim trophies like air traffic control torches. Do you want an explanation? Or do you want to leave? Fucking move! Leo screams. The words have a commanding force that has nothing to do with their volume. Mountain climbers the victims are not, but they are more than willing to get a sprained ankle or blood-dripping rope burn to make sure they all get down as quickly as possible. They are still climbing when the ward fails. The closet monster's seeming endless bulk snakes its way slowly into the room, as if to make it clear that the victims were never the concern. Leo is trying his damnedest to keep things together, but cracks show in his stone-faced demeanor. He draws the pistol from before. It looks like a paltry toy when faced with the horror dragging itself closer to us. We back toward the window, still 2 victims left. The last man is in horrible shape. I don't like our chances. As I think this, I realize accepting your fate isn't the panacea for fear it's made out to be. If I can get these people out of this slice of hell, whatever happens to me is worth it. At least in some sense I've balanced out the karmic scales a little, but that doesn't mean I'm looking forward to how that fate plays out. What Leo failed to mention, my foul-mouthed little novelty, is that my kind are excellent fleshsmiths. I will make you 2, one creature that begs for death but is terrified of the release. You will be an abomination, my plaything for longer than you could possibly understand. There isn't a hint of exaggeration in the threat. The last victim hits the ground running. Leo could take the rope down, but even dropping halfway, this thing would have me by then. Go! Leo says, pointing the cheap pistol at the thing. He's already had to have go. Conversation once tonight, I don't make him have it again. The proxy wasn't made for acrobatics, and this rope wasn't made to last. But I won't let Leo's sacrifice be in vain. I give the man one last look before I take the straining rope. The sound is like a thunderclap, and instantly think to hearing Leo in the bathroom, the strange prayer, the smell of fresh blood. That pistol, the cheap, likely stolen and misused machine, fires much faster than it was ever made to. The projectiles hit with more force than is possible, blowing dinner plate-sized chunks out of the monster. And Leo has fired well over 30 shots from the 8-round clip before he slams another one home. The entity is hurt, enraged, and stunned. Leo throws the pistol out the window, its white-hot barrel instantly igniting a patch of grass. He's running full force, clearly expecting me to already be down the rope. Our descent is a tangled, painful thing, the rope slowing it just enough to escape broken legs and servos. That won't be anything more than a distraction. Leo says, panting as we both begin a limping jog away from the bishop's house. The creature stares at us from behind a half-curtained window. At first I question why it's not just coming after us, but I think back to JP explaining how hard it gets covering up very obvious things. Aren't you coming? I ask Flap, the massive bird-like thing standing in shadows gnawing on a leg. Got some unfinished business here. Tell Hive I'll catch up. Flap answers. We make it to JP, waiting a couple of blocks away. There hasn't been many upbeat moments since I started this, but relaying our escape and getting those people out, it felt good. Where's Flap? Hive asks a few hours later. I've put myself back into what I sadly think of as my real body. The dark thoughts are an unwelcome guest. I told you, he said he had some things to take care of. Leo says impatiently, clearly being uncomfortable around Hive. Thank you for making sure we were all so well informed. The small, toy-like malignant says, sarcastically. Leo has been arguing with JP and Sveta about leaving. Kaz and I, on the other hand, want to be on the first plane out. For Christ's sake, Leo, it's not just you. If you stay, sooner or later things are going to be traced back here. Then it's my ass. This isn't a request. JP says, tone giving no room for debate. The conversation devolves into the kind of vulgar that can only be achieved by friends who have known each other for much too long. Right about as things were getting to people's mothers, JP's phone begins to ring. He angrily puts up a finger to silence Leo. Shut the fuck up. This is probably a paying customer. Hello? JP's face drops, he puts down the phone and hits speaker. Hive, you there? I hear Flap say, the line is distorted. I can hear light traffic in the background. Yes, of course I am, you should be too. Hive responds. That's the thing, I shouldn't be, and neither should you. We've spent so long pissing about with mortals, and things that vainly call themselves horrors. I get it, our kind has been anything but welcoming, but look at yourself. You are siding with a hunter and a graysmith. I'm done with this Hive, and with every bit of my will, I hope you are as well. The sinister but heartfelt words coming in Flap's grating, comical tone makes the implication all the more terrifying. Fuck. I told you, we don't go working with the goddamn malignant. Leo screams at JP. I have nothing to do with this betrayal. Hive says defensively. The hell you didn't. JP accuses. The argument turns to chaos. Flap's laughter cuts through the din. Oh well, I tried. We've grown too close to the meat Hive, we've began to feel like them. Tonight is my first step toward purging that weakness. It's been a slice. Hive says. Words become exhausted. Every insult has been thrown. Every accusation laid bare. All the while Flap taunts us with threats of the bishop's power and promises of his mercy. A few seconds of silence is broken by Leo throwing a vase in a fit of impotent rage. Injury and mental fatigue make his aim poor. Instead of exploding against a wall, it shatters a living room window. The noise of the splintering glass is a cacophony, a signal flare of a person who refuses to accept his fate. Everyone's blood runs cold when we hear it again, a fraction of a second later through JP's phone speaker. The six of us walk over to the now shattered bay window, and we see it. Nothing that would stand out at first, just average cars parked on an average street. Maybe at worst it'd seem like a handful of relatives visiting a dozen homes. But then, many of the cars start to flick their lights on and off. Slowly, perfectly in unison. We're going to get to know each other very closely over the next few weeks, Kinder. Hope you're comfy. The bishop's voice says through the phone before the line disconnects. What's going on? I ask, understanding the basics but nothing more. It's going to be a siege. They are likely tapping into my wards as we speak. It's the smartest move, make things slow, low, and quiet. Starve us out, this is what I was afraid of, this is what you can do with numbers. Can't call the cops, they can cause all kinds of shit, and it's not illegal to sit in your car with some rock salt and silver shavings. Can't just get the cops called here, because as you may have noticed, this place basically made of ATF and FDA felonies. If they catch us trying to go get food, they have plenty of psychopaths willing to go to prison. Fuck me. Fuck us. JP says, barely above a whisper. And that's where things stand. Staring down a supernatural siege with nothing but my friends and you guys. I don't know what we can do to pull through this time, but at least all of us are here, right?